To session. Oh, yep, I should probably use my mic. There we go. All right. We're going to start today's meeting, January 26th. I would like to remind us all to silence our cell phones. I'm going to open up the meeting today with words by Alex Preddy, who was an ICU nurse that was recently killed in Minneapolis. Today, we remember that freedom is not free. We have to work at it, nurture it, protect it, and even sacrifice for it. May we never forget and always remember our brothers and sisters who have served so that we may enjoy the gift of freedom. So in this moment, we remember and give thanks for their dedication and selfless service to our nation in the cause of our freedom. In this solemn hour, we read hymn, our honor and our gratitude. I also want to mention the names of those individuals that have been killed by ICE, and I also want to name a community member that we recently lost that is not related to ICE in any way, any sort of federal connection. And I'd like to hold a minute of silence. Silverio Villegas Gonzalez, Renee Good, Alex Preddy, Yair Castillo Alvarez. And I also want to mention that there have been 15 community members that have been taken from our community, who are parents, members of our community, our neighbors. So let us start this meeting. Jessica Galas, if you want to make any public comment, please do so.
Hi, I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Jessica Salas, and I am running for Oregon's 3rd Congressional District. I come from the working class, 12 years in the beer industry, and just want to represent everyday people. Along with, I'm a part of a bunch of rapid response groups for ICE. I go down actively to the ICE facility in Portland and unfortunately get gassed down there. But yeah, I just wanted to say hello and hi. Thanks.
Thank you. And I realized right now that it says Salas, not Gala, so I apologize for that. I think the next one says Corden. Carolyn, oh, sorry about that.
There we go. Okay. All right. Well, I am Carolyn Smale. I live on 8th and Cascade, and I feel kind of a little silly for doing this at this time, but my thought is when you have a lot of big stuff going on, you can't lose sight of small little things either. Otherwise it's, yeah, that everything affects everything. But what I'm here for is I'm a dog owner. I've owned dogs for over 20 years. We have to get a license, so we have to keep them on a leash. So we have to pick up their poop. We have to make sure they don't poop on people's yards. We have to keep them in our yard. And we have to buy a license, which doesn't cost very much, doesn't pay for the program itself. Make sure they have their rabies shots. What I'm requesting is that within the city limits, not within the county, but within the city limits, that cats should be licensed the same as pet dogs, and that the city of Hood River should act an ordinance to that effect. The issues that I have seen over the last years are when we plant our garden, cats come in, scratch it up, pick the seeds, eat our seedlings, mess it up, have to replant it. We have to buy stuff to put over top to stop that from happening. Cats poop in our garden while we have food, which means then we don't get to eat our food. The cats, one particular cat comes into not only our house, other people's houses, eats our dog food. In the summer, we keep our back door open. Cat comes in, eats the food. It was on the deck the other day, staring at the food through the window. They kill and maim birds. The owners don't come to my yard to come pick up those birds. I have to deal with the birds. I don't want to pick up a bird that has been maimed. I don't want to pick up a dead bird and have to deal with it. if it's not something that my particular pet didn't do. An owner of one cat, which is probably why I'm here today, it was dark out. It was probably 7 or 8 o'clock at night in early November. I hear somebody coming up from my backyard. My house it's fully fenced in. I didn't hear the person come in the fence. No one knocked on my door. Go outside pretty much to check on my dog because I heard this. I didn't know what was going on. Person comes walking up from my backyard. And I said, hey, what are you doing? Oh, I'm looking for my cat. And I'm like, you're not allowed in my yard. You didn't ask, you just went back there. Oh, well, the tracker showed that my cat was here. And you probably know Waffles because it was Waffles. So I trespassed her. But I don't need people coming in my yard looking for their cats. We keep our dog in our yard. We spend a lot of time and money on fencing. Like I said, we have to walk him on a leash. We have to pick up his poop. I try really hard not to have him poop in other people's yards. I'm scared of cats from when I was little. My great aunt had this horrible cat named Kit Kat that would steal your food and scratch you and try to bite you. So I am not the biggest cat person, but I shouldn't have to deal with somebody else's cat coming into my yard and coming into my house. So I think people that live within the city of Hood River should have to keep their cats within their boundaries. And I ask that you consider that, and thank you. Oh,
Thanks. Next, we have Tamira.
There you go. Thank you. I'm no pro at this. Okay, I have a question. Are we still in a state of emergency? We're still in a state of emergency. Okay, great. My request today is that we treat it as a state of emergency, okay? So on December 18th, the county declared a state of emergency because there was 3 inches of rain coming in, which might have caused some property damage, was not going to kill anybody, was not going to abduct people or split up families. You have the list of the people they partnered with when this state of emergency happened. So here's what I'm suggesting is that in the city, we also partner up so that we can support people and protect them from ICE. So this emergency affects everybody, but it particularly affects the 50% of our city who are Latino. People are terrified. I'm a therapist, and I can tell you that this is not just something that's going to affect our community now. This is going to have generational impacts. This is trauma. This is real, and we need to protect people from this. So one of the best strategies we have in this particular emergency is communication. And right now the communication is being done by rapid responders and social media. And the city is really good at communication. You guys have vehicles with loudspeakers, you have reader boards, you have the ability to use the mail to get out information to people. So I have some specific requests. I would like the city to mail out know your rights information in multiple languages to every single household in this city so that there's at least a chance that people know what to do if ICE shows up at the door, that they know they don't have to open the door and that they're less likely to be kidnapped, that families are less likely to get torn apart. I'm going to ask the city to use the communication resources that they have, such as reader boards, so that I don't have to be the one posting on Facebook all the time. ICE is in town. Help me do this. There are other people getting the word out, like Hood River Latino Network, but you have the ability to put a reader board up where everybody who's driving by can see it and know. You have the ability to use the, whatever that text message alert system is called, to tell people that there is an emergency happening right now, a life-threatening emergency. That is what ICE is. It's life-threatening, so let's treat it like it is. I also want to ask for some changes in the way that our police department deals with ICE. They're supposed to remain neutral. There is no neutral when it comes to ICE. If police isn't there, they're actively assisting ICE because they're not actively assisting our community. And we need them to protect our community. We need them to let people know. We need them to pull over ICE if they're breaking the law, if they're running red lights, if they're speeding, if they're not using plates. When the police say they haven't seen cars with plates, they have seen cars with plates. I have sent them pictures of cars with plates. They have responded to an incident where I was hit by an ICE agent driving a car without plates. So let's have our police enforce the law. The city of Hillsborough is debating this right now. I think it may be yesterday. They were talking about having their police department enforce the laws and pull over ICE agents and make sure they have credentials. So let's do that. So I ask that you reevaluate what neutral is in this situation with our police department. And I also want to acknowledge that this is scary for all of us, that like there are fears that we are going to be targeted because we're standing up. Y'all, we're going to get targeted. We are a blue town in a blue state. We are 50% Latino. We also are an agricultural community and a manufacturing community. We are a target already. We have been blitzed over and over. We were blitzed on the day that that list for that emergency was put together. We were blitzed on December 18th and we did nothing. The rapid responders were out there. HRPD did nothing. The city did nothing. We've got to do better, y'all. We are going to get blitzed really hard at some point. Our community members are going to get kidnapped and somebody is going to get hurt. And I don't want to see anybody in this town get shot like the people who have been shot in Minneapolis. And I don't want to see our community members be locked up in cages and ripped away from their families. So please, this is an emergency. Let's treat it like an emergency and partner up with people like the county did when 3 inches of rain was coming in. Thank you all, please.
Thank you. Abigail, are there any agenda additions or corrections?
No, there is not.
All right, we have 2 presentations. Now is the time for business from the audience. I think I just passed that one and didn't even mention it. So we have a proclamation from the Hood River County Reads program and also a presentation from the Mid-Columbia Housing Authority.
Counselor, I'm just checking in to see if we have someone from the library here to present tonight. It doesn't look like it. I thought they were confirmed, but we will reschedule them for another meeting. But I do know the Housing Authority is in the house and ready to present.
All right.
Thank you.
Karen.
Hello. Okay, good evening. My name is Karen Long. I'm the Executive Director at Mid-Columbia Housing Authority and Columbia Cascade Housing Corporation. Thank you so much for giving us time tonight to do a brief presentation on our work. And thank you for your interest in our work. And I'm joined by my coworker.
Sergio Garcia, Director of Development with the same organization.
So our organization addresses the housing needs of low-income households in the 5 counties of the Gorge. We serve Hood River, Wasco, Sherman, Klickitat, and Skamania counties. We have 4 main ways that we help the community. We have federal rental assistance programs offered by the Housing Authority. We have several asset building and resident services programs also offered by the Housing Authority. And Columbia Cascade Housing Corporation owns, manages, develops, and preserves affordable housing apartment communities. And we also have several homeownership programs and resources. So our main program administered by the Housing Authority is called the Housing Choice Voucher Program. We send out approximately $750,000 every month directly to private landlords on behalf of around 900 households. Here in the city of Hood River, we serve about 95 households out of 900, which is not proportionate, right, given the 5-county region. I don't need to tell you all that the rent prices here are really high, and our voucher holders have a really hard time being able to use their vouchers here. So we see a lot of people who are from Hood River who have to move elsewhere to find an affordable place to live with their voucher. And we send out about the 95 households, it's about $85,000 that goes directly to landlords in the city of Hood River. The way that the program works is that our voucher makes rent affordable for people based on their income. So all households pay 30% of their income for the rent and utilities, and the Housing Authority makes the payment directly to the landlord. About 2/3 of our households are on fixed income, so that's elderly and disabled people, and about another third are working families with children. We also have several asset building and resident services programs available to people who receive vouchers. Our family self-sufficiency program has 2 caseworkers who work with people on our programs to connect them to services in the community with a focus on career building and financial education to really move people off of public assistance programs. We also participate in the Bridges to Health Pathways program. We've been participating in this program since it started. We issue vouchers. People come to a meeting, they get a voucher. We talk to them or talk at them for an hour about all our program rules and then basically say good luck. And we felt like that wasn't doing right by people and that wasn't good enough, especially if 2/3 of the people that we're serving are elderly and disabled. And so we have 2 community health workers on staff who go to the voucher meetings and tell people if you're feeling really overwhelmed, that's what our jobs are, to help you navigate the system, help you find housing. And the focus is really getting our voucher utilization rates up. Typically every 10 vouchers we issue, only 5 get used after people wait on a waiting list for a really long time. So anything that we can do to help people use their vouchers, we try to do that. We've also been teaching financial education classes for about a decade, credit, debt, just any sort of money management, because your credit and your savings account are very much connected to housing. We also have a matched savings account program where the household saves $1 and it's matched by $5 and it can be used for certain assets, including education, homeownership, or starting a small business. And we also partner with the food bank and offer a food bank in our front office area at our administrative office in the Dalles. In addition to our Housing Authority work, we build, own, manage, preserve affordable housing. We have currently 24 properties and 435 homes throughout the 5 counties. You all know well that our 25th property will be Mariposa Village, and Sergio's gonna share on that in a minute. But we're also working on a project in the Dalles that will break ground this year and add 76 additional
affordable homes. We're working on a preservation project in Cascade Locks that will preserve 12 homes there. And we're working hard on a assisted living facility in White Salmon that we've been working on for a little while.
Hi, everyone. So I just wanted to provide a brief overview of our existing project. Mariposa Village is a 130 unit affordable multifamily rental housing development here in Hood River. This project is focused entirely on rental housing for working families and does not include home ownership units. The site includes a mix of studios through 3-bedroom homes, including both townhomes and apartments. It also includes a community center with resident services, a public park and playground, walking trails, bicycle parking, and connections to the surrounding trail system. The intent of the property is to create a long-term community asset, not just housing, with space for services, recreation, and connection built into the design. Construction of the property began in April and follows a roughly 20 and a half month schedule under federal Davis-Bacon prevailing wage requirements. Phase 1 includes buildings 1, 2, and 3 and the community center and is scheduled to be completed in late summer of next year and of this year. I'm sorry. Phase 2 includes buildings 4, 5, and 6 and is expected to complete in the early months of January or February of 2027. With the park and trail improvements completed alongside of that phase. This phased approach allows us to bring housing online sooner while managing costs, workforce availability, and site logistics. I wanted to provide a quick snapshot of what is happening on the site today. Framing is complete at the community building and is underway across multiple residential buildings. Roofing underlayment has begun at building 3 and installation is starting at building 2 and drywall crews are also on site. Foundations and stem walls are complete at building 6 with framing scheduled to begin later this month. Site utility work continues, including water line installation and joint utility trenching. Rents at Mariposa Village are based on income limits, not on a tenant's actual earnings in a given year. Maximum rents are capped at 30% of area median income for an assumed household size. 39 units will have project-based vouchers, meaning residents pay 30% of their actual income towards rent and utilities. Housing choice vouchers will also be accepted in non-PPV units. These homes serve people already in the community, including construction workers, dental assistants, teacher aides, carriers, etc.
I want to note that these rent amounts are based on the income limits, and HUD changes the income limits every April. And so those numbers will likely change before people are moving in, but these are the current numbers that we have for the rents and the incomes. And I mentioned earlier that we have a hard time getting people to be able to use their vouchers in the city of Hood River, just because there aren't a lot of affordable homes. And so we're really excited that Mariposa Village will also offer a chance for people to use their vouchers where they want to live or where they grew up.
Phases of development. So I included the slide on here to provide you a rough understanding of why our projects take so long. Oftentimes the feasibility phase can take 6 months to several years and is where we evaluate a potential site, zoning, infrastructure, environmental conditions, and whether a project can work financially. Pre-development typically takes 1 to 2 years and is the most fragile phase. This is when we finalize design, secure permits, coordinate utilities, and apply for funding sources, each with different rules and timelines and requirements. Construction usually takes 1 to 2 years, depending on the size of the project, followed by closeout, which can take another 6 to 12 months, depending on when the project stabilizes with tenants. Decisions made early, especially at the local level, have an outsized impact on whether a project ever reaches construction. So I added this slide because there's often a critique that affordable housing is not affordable to build, and that isn't intentional on our end. We try to bring the cost down as much as we can while also operating as an organization and ensuring that the project succeeds financially for its entire term. And other factors that contribute to the expensive cost of a project include that our affordable housing has a lot longer timelines. Unlike market rate development projects, often spend years applying for a competitive state and federal funding before construction can begin. During that time, construction and material costs can continue to rise while rent remains fixed by affordability requirements. Multifamily has significantly a lot more due diligence of requirements than single family housing, including the fact that our buildings are often a lot larger and have larger site footprints that trigger more extensive environmental review, geotechnical work, stormwater and utility analysis, traffic and access planning, and fire and life safety conditions. Affordable housing is also frequently limited to more challenging sites due to land availability, zoning constraints, slope, wetlands, and infrastructure limitations that results in higher site preparation cost and additional engineering before construction can even begin. These projects are also held to a higher a building and energy standard. At this project, we are building to Energy Star multifamily new construction standards, which exceed a base building code. These standards improve long-term efficiency, durability, and comfort for residents, but they also increase the upfront costs. So in short, there's a lot of things that are added onto our affordable projects based off of the grants that we apply to. So it isn't as if we can just go to a bank and get a loan on it, because then if that were the case, we would have to charge higher rents, and that's essentially where you're at within the existing market. Next. Addressing the funding challenge. To make projects work, we focus on 4 strategies: reducing development costs, lowering financing costs, lowering long-term operating costs, and filling the remaining funding capital. The gap is filled through a mix of state, federal, and local resources, including tax credits, housing trust funds, bonds, grants, and rent subsidies. Local participation plays a critical role in ensuring that these projects are competitive and financially feasible.
Okay, we also offer several homeownership programs in addition to the vouchers and building housing. And last week, CCHC became a HUD certified housing counseling center, which is really exciting. We've been working, that's been an organizational goal for about 15 years. So it was a really hard application process with lots of requirements, but we did it. And that will open up more funding to be able to come directly from HUD to our organization and to the community. So we offer an ABCs of home buying class. It's a class available for first-time home buyers. And then we also have one-on-one homeownership counseling. So people can attend the class and then also meet with a homeownership counselor who can talk about their specific situation and how kind of build a path to homeownership. We have very limited down payment assistance programs. Unfortunately, the state of Oregon has stopped funding down payment assistance, which is confusing to us because we all know that that's a great need. But we're hoping that that can be brought back in the future. We also have a foreclosure avoidance program, and homeownership counselors are also trained in how to talk with people about foreclosure, either prevention or helping them through the process and the easiest way forward. We have home repair programs that offer loans that are 0% interest and don't have to be repaid until the home buyer sells the home. A lot of seniors use this program to help make modifications to their home, to make shower bars and ramps and things to help them stay in their home longer. And then we're also getting into the community land trust model. I think that you all are familiar with Big River Community Land Trust, and we've also been figuring out a way that we can do this as well for home buyers that are between 70 and 80% of area median income. And we have our first project in Carson, Washington. Oops, this one.
Yeah, that was yours.
There we go. We have our first project in Carson, Washington that Sergio is going to talk about.
Yeah, so our first project, as Karen had mentioned, is in Carson. It's off of Smith Beacon Road, and for anyone who's familiar, it's adjacent to the golf course. We are planning to build 14 single-family homes. We're essentially dividing them in half. Half of them will be 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom homes, and the other half will be 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom homes. And that was done intentionally based off of one, the required parcel size of the property, given that it's not an incorporated city. They have lower density allowances per property, regardless of what's accommodated there. The homes will have city water, but they will be on septic. Our hope is that they will be multi-generational homes whenever possible and for whoever qualifies. But we do hope to expand this program across the gorge. On the Washington side, we were awarded Housing Trust Fund dollars through the Washington State Department of Commerce. And also were awarded some funds in collaboration with Skamania County through CHIP, which stands for Connecting Housing to Infrastructure Program. And we hope to break ground on this property mid to late summer of this year, and depending on the demand within the region, we can either complete everything within a year and a half or 3 years.
And that's all we have tonight. We have our contact information. We're always happy to answer any questions. Please reach out. If you ever, something comes to mind, you know, tomorrow or next week, we're always happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
I'm not sure if you know, but since you were talking about Mariposa Village
Yeah.
specifically, I don't know if you guys are like, you're part of the building of it and we're pretty familiar with that project. But I'm curious if it's been opened up to potential residents or if you guys have a wait list or how people are, you know, are you hearing any expressions of interest from prospective residents? And if not, like, you know, who do they contact? And you know, with the timing, it's really exciting. Thank you for the work that you guys are doing. This is really great. And it's cool to hear what's happening in Carson too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
what's the status of, for prospective Mariposa Village residents?
Sure, it's still the interest email that is run by Community Development Partners or CDP. We get calls, I had a voicemail today of someone who was actually really touching. She, I don't know how she got to my voicemail, but she said she has had to move around 5 or 6 times and she's just so excited for this opportunity to have a permanent place to live. And it made me just, there's like moments like that remind us of like why we do this work. And it's so meaningful to people to have a permanent place and not have to feel like they're always moving around. But to answer your question, the waiting list, the official waiting list for tenants should open within the next 6 weeks. Then we'll put out a public notice, an email will go out to that interest list email. We're going to be putting out a lot of information about when that date will be opening. And then we also have the project-based voucher waiting list will also open on the same day, just to make it easier. So if people are applying for a unit, they can also, if they are income qualified, apply for one of the 39 project-based vouchers, which means that the household will pay based on their income instead of paying just the rate that's affordable to the 60% household.
Any other questions? Doug?
Thank you for being here. I keep choosing to drive up Rand every time I'm in that part of town just to see the progress, and it's just quite unbelievable. Usually, you know, developments take so long and whatnot. I know it took us a long time to get to that part, but I think the mayor said it a couple of weeks ago. It's like once they broke ground, it's like, wow, it's like there's a building, there's a building, there's a building. So it's super exciting. You know, I'm really encouraged to hear about, you know, your entrance into the land trust model. You mentioned funding from Washington, et cetera. Are there impediments to funding in Oregon that we should be aware of that make it harder to do in Oregon?
Our primary challenge in Oregon has been finding developable land. It's very limited here based off of the scenic area,
Mhm.
and the lots that are available have a lot of challenges associated with them.
Yep.
Ranging from infrastructure or just zoning.
This is probably a question for staff, but can we help get the word out in 6 weeks of when, is that something we can repost, et cetera?
Yes, thank you. We'll coordinate with the Housing Authority and CDP on that.
Awesome. And I, you know, I think we get, are we gonna have access to this presentation as well? Is this something we can have? I think we get a lot of questions about, you know, what does affordable mean? And just having some of those figures that are on there about, you know, the sizes of the units and, you know, what, you know, I mean, it's difficult for people to connect, oh, 60% AMI, but when you start putting the totals and what goes on there and everything, I know they'll adjust in April, but I think that's just helpful for us to make people aware of, you know, what happens.
Yeah, we can make that available.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for being here again.
Grant?
Others asked my questions.
I do have a question. So, thank you for being here, first of all. Appreciate all the work that you do. You mentioned that there were 95 households in Hood River that are receiving rental assistance in total of 85,000. Can you elaborate around, I think you mentioned later in the presentation that cost was one of those, but how do you like advertise that? And given that there's over 900 individuals that you're helping in a variety of counties, I'm trying to understand that 95, is it that our rents are too high here in Hood River? Like, I'd like to better understand the 95.
I think that it's a variety of reasons, but I think first is that the rents are too high, and that there just aren't enough affordable units. I think also Hood River is one of the most desirable places to live in the Gorge, and that means that when a unit does come available, it's really competitive. And a lot of times people can show up, you know, a landlord wants first, last deposit. And if you can show up with, you know, a $5,000-$6,000 check and say, I can move in today, a landlord's more likely to pick that person over someone who says, well, I have a voucher and I have to have an inspection and I can get you the deposit next week. And so there, I think there's just a lot of reasons why our vouchers are not utilized as often in Hood River, in the city of Hood River.
Thank you. I have two other questions. You talked about the homeownership program. Have there been recipients of the homeownership program here in Hood River?
The down payment assistance.
Mhm.
program? Yes, we've had several who are able to buy homes in Hood River.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And given that there's been a lot of uncertainty in federal and state funding, you mentioned that there's $900,000. Have you heard that that could potentially decrease, increase?
For the housing choice voucher
Mhm.
funds. The THUD bill, which is the way that we get our funding, this actually has an increase for the housing choice voucher program and an increase for the family self-sufficiency program. There is a decrease for public housing, but that's not something that we have in the Gorge. So sometimes you might hear about there's a decrease in public housing, but we don't have that here. So our programs, you know, we know that passed in the House, so we don't know what's going to happen next.
Yeah. I think if you are hearing of such programs, if you can just keep us in the loop or connect with Abigail, we have many constituents that ask around the HUD program, and I feel like at a loss of words based off of, you know, what I may hear through the grapevine. So it's important to just give factual information when we know something's coming. So thank you. Any other questions? Go for it.
I have a follow-up question to the list for Mariposa Village. How will residents be determined? Is it like first come, first serve, or first come who will qualify first serve? Like how do you know how that will work out yet?
It will be first come, first serve, and then they'll do, the property management company will do a verification of their income to make sure that they're income qualified.
All right. No other questions? Then let's move on to our consent agenda. Thank you for being here. Okay, if I can get a motion for the consent agenda for the fiscal year Urban Renewal Agency Annual Report and the Gorge Grown request for fee waiver.
I move to approve the consent agenda. By the way, are we tabling the proclamation for Hood River Reads until next time?
Yes, my suggestion would be that that I can reach out to the library and see, or to the Friends of the Library and ask them to come back to the next meeting.
Do we need to table that?
I think it's just an adjustment to the agenda.
Okay. All right, I have a.
Quick point of order. I thought we discussed last time, I should have mentioned this before, that we maybe needed to extend our emergency declaration via consent agenda.
Right, it was, so the last one was for 30 days. You did it on January 12th. So
Okay.
that's on my agenda for the February 9th, or
Cool.
yeah, February 9th meeting.
Just making sure.
Not this one.
I thought that's what we would say. about
Yeah, got it. Thank you.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor.
Second.
Motion made by Counselor Polson, second by Counselor Gaki. All those in favor?
Aye.
Yes. All right, consent agenda passes. Discussion items will be general obligation bond.
Thank you, Council President Rivera and members of the City Council. So this is a continuation of the discussion we were having on January 12th about selecting our investment targets if we choose to move forward with a bond on the November 2026 election. Council requested refined polling, focusing on the police station and housing only, and then the combination of police station and housing, which were combinations that weren't specifically polled on the first round of polling, but were indicated to be favored by voters relatively to some of the other options. So we also, in the poll, changed how the police station language was phrased. Instead of talking about public safety writ large, we zeroed in on some of the discrete features of police station remodel and the direct outcomes that would result. And so I have Jake has joined us from Praxis, and I believe we have Maggie from Patinkin Research Strategies to go through the results of the second polling. And I apologize, we couldn't give it to you in advance. It was just got wrapped up and I only got it myself today. Maggie and Jake, take it away.
Yes, thank you. So yes, as Will mentioned, I'm Maggie Simmons from Patinkin Research Strategies, and we conducted both the first poll and now the second poll. So I will start by diving into the methodology of this survey. We spoke to 400 likely November 2026 voters within the city of Hood River. We used a professional interviewers via telephone with a representative number of landline and cell phones. We used a voter file-based sample and used both quotas and weighting to make sure it was reflective demographically of the November 2026 electorate. This survey was in the field January 19th through the 21st. The margin of error for this data set is going to be plus or minus 4.9 percentage points. Anytime I'm talking about subgroups, the margin of error is going to vary and be higher just because we have fewer interviews behind each cell. And then I think that covers it. The rest of it is pretty self-explanatory. So I do want to pause here on the voter demographics. I think it's important to flag sort of the difference between the voter universe writ large and what a likely November 2026 electorate looks like. The main things I would flag on this slide is that the likely November 2026 electorate skews a bit older compared to the registered voter universe as a whole within the city. It also skews a bit more partisan. So you have a lot fewer of these non-affiliated or independent voters and more particularly registered Democrats showing in a November midterm election. The other thing I'll note is it is a bit whiter than the registered voter universe as a whole. So diving into sort of the perception of these various bond measures that we tested, as we'll sort of set up, there were 3 different packages that were tested in this round of polling. One is an $18 million bond that addresses both the police station and the affordable housing. So the way that this was framed was that it would update the city's 100-year-old police facility. This includes adding technology-enabled interview rooms to support high-quality investigations, up-to-date evidence processing facilities to protect officers when handling dangerous substances, and other improvements that reduce the time officers spend in the office, increasing availability to answer calls for service. The renovated police facility will also meet earthquake standards specific to essential public safety buildings with backup power, enhancing the city's 911 emergency responder preparedness. This bond would also address Hood River's status as the most unaffordable community in the state by funding the construction of additional housing that is affordable for Hood River residents with varying household incomes. And then this bond was projected to cost the average Hood River property owner $16.32 per month. We then broke up the 2 components to test sort of separately what it looks like for just a police facility and then just the housing option. And then each of those was priced at $8.16 per month average cost as well. When you look at how sort of these various bonds perform, the $9 million housing only bond performs the best. That's sort of the long and the short of it in this test, particularly when you look at sort of the yes to no margin. You can see that, when you look at the $18 million housing and police bond, this is within margin of error in terms of the yes/no vote. The intensity of feeling actually leans a bit negative on the sort of bond option that would include both of those items. For just the police facility, you have sort of similar levels of support. You have weaker, strong support, and then you have sort of similar levels of strong opposition. The $9 million housing only bond has the highest level of strong support overall, And then also, is notably the only one to sort of go past that 50% mark. It also has the weakest overall opposition. We then asked a direct question that said, having learned a little bit more about what this bond could fund, which of the following project is the most important to you personally? And when forced to pick the sort of top priority, 38% say that constructing more housing that is affordable for Hood River residents is their top priority. 1 in 5 say that modernizing the police station is their priority, even another 1 in 5 who are undecided, and then 23% who say that neither is a priority to them personally. This next slide gets into sort of the partisan dynamics here. This is based on party registration available on the voter file. I think notably the $9 million housing only bond gets the highest rate of support amongst Democrats and these non-affiliated and independent voters. As you'll recall on that initial slide, a majority of likely November 2026 voters are going to be registered Democrats, but there's also a significant portion of those non-affiliated independent voters. And there's not really much of a difference based on the makeup of the bond amongst registered Republicans. So sometimes we see that registered Republicans are more supportive of public safety as opposed to other priorities. That's not necessarily the case. In this instance, we see similar rates of support sort of for every type of bond project amongst Republicans, and it's a fairly, frankly, low level of support across the board. When you look at the $9 million housing bond specifically and demographics, we do see that there are gaps based on age, party affiliation, home ownership status. We already looked essentially at these party registration numbers, but younger residents tend to be a bit more supportive than older residents, though it's not a massive gap. You still have a plurality of seniors who say that this is still a priority to them, that they would vote yes on a housing bond. And then I think something that makes a lot of intuitive sense, renters more supportive than homeowners of this housing bond. But still, you have a plurality of homeowners who say that they are also supportive. I'm now going to turn things over to Jake to sort of talk next steps and sort of what their recommendations are from a communications perspective.
Hey, everybody. Again, my name is Jake Weigler. I'm a partner at Praxis. We've been excited to work with the city in Patinkin to help you identify the path forward here. So as you've seen, we've gotten some additional data. I know we had earlier in our previous presentation kind of 4 different bond models. I think the direction today was really to come back and focus on that police station and the housing, affordable housing, or housing that would support affordability in the community, I should say. And so as you kind of wrestle with these numbers and decide your path forward, I know there's a lot of different considerations, politics, policy. What I'm here to do is kind of talk about next steps. I think at this point we have gotten as much information out of the polling as we can. We do recommend doing an additional poll before final referral this summer. There are a lot of things that we can't control, right? The economy is going to change. Other jurisdictions might bring forward a ballot measure, a bond measure between now and when you'd refer. And so we can't control those things. We do want to understand where the voters are this summer, but we do want to also take the time we have now to talk about and explain kind of the logic and the decision of the city to move forward. And so the next 2 slides outline a little bit about how we typically work with cities on this front. And on some of these projects, we do a lot, some we do a little bit. It just depends on kind of what is the capacity and ability of the city. So generally, we talk about communication strategy and engagement strategy. The first piece here is the communication strategy. That is, how are you going to put information out into the community? And I'm not telling you anything that you don't know, that relying on this meeting or other kinds of communication channels from the city will only get you so far, right? There's a chunk of your electorate that just simply aren't going to take the time to come to a town hall or to read every newsletter. And so what we want to think about is kind of a surround strategy approach here of how do we provide different mechanisms to try and get that information out to the public and help them understand kind of the decision before the city and why you're approaching it the way you are. So the obvious opportunities are thinking about your existing communications channel, the city's website, the social media channels, updating the content there to provide a good clarity both about the substance at what the city is looking at in terms of bond proposal, as well as the process. What brought you to this moment? Other community engagement processes. I know you all have done a lot of intentional work there. I think we're seeing that's actually more important with the public, of feeling like I want to understand how you got to this point. You know, I'm fine to co-sign on it once I understand that, but I'd like to kind of see the breadcrumbs of how you got here. And so putting out that information, including in bite-sized chunks, so posts with informational graphics that can be easily digested through your social media. In some communities, we do video content. We've done that in some other projects. I have a couple examples in the last slide. I can talk about that. In the reality in a digital world is video can tell a story in a way that text simply can't. So sometimes we add video content. And then we can also do video, digital promotion to reach a broader audience. You know, you all will reach a certain level of the community with Facebook and with your other channels. We also employ digital advertising programs to say, no, we actually want to reach all of the voters in the community. How do we put a little resources behind this to make sure that it's getting into their newsfeed and they're seeing it? In addition, we also frequently recommend mailers. Mailers are one of the most effective ways, particularly for older voters, to get a fair amount of information out there and to communicate to them what's happening on a measure. And that can be particularly important if it's a little more of a complex issue, or you need to give them a little backstory. It isn't just kind of like, the police station's broke, we got to fix it. You know, when you're going to have a little more of a complicated story to tell, you want to kind of try and take the time that you get space in a mail piece to do. So there's some of the communication strategies we reference. On the next slide, talk about community engagement. And again, I think it's also important not just to push information out, but to get feedback from the community. And obviously, the poll we have today is kind of the gold standard. It is a scientifically representative sample of the community. So it tells you pretty accurately where the public is. There is some margin of error, which you can talk a little bit about with those different numbers. But I can tell you, you know, this is a representative sample of your community. Some things that are maybe not as representative, but still also good ways to get the message out and get feedback. Town halls with a focus on accessibility and inclusion, by which I mean thinking about how to design those in a way that's going to get good turnout, or maybe allow for people who don't physically show up. Maybe it's recorded, so we can put a recording online. Thinking about, you know, the reflection of the community there, having language translation or other ways to make sure that other parts of the community that are non-English speaking can still obtain information. And then we also want to provide some feedback mechanisms there. Tell us what you think. Here's an opportunity to give us some feedback and to communicate that back both to the council, but also to the community, to show that as you go through this process, it was a learning opportunity for you to kind of think about how to further refine this proposal before it was finally put before voters. A similar tactic we would usually employ it would be meetings with stakeholders. Beyond kind of those general open conversations with the community, we want to think intentionally about who are different audiences we really want to try and reach out to, whether they're organizations or sometimes community partner groups can be really important for reaching particular parts of the population. You know, your data, for instance, showed that older voters maybe have some more questions about this proposal. So as we're thinking about those different stakeholders, we want to be intentional in saying, let's try and find a way to communicate to the older residents in the community, whether that's through retirement communities or organizations or other strategies. Let's find a way to kind of make sure that we're really reaching that audience. We also freely recommend a community survey through the city's website and social media. That doesn't have the scientific validity of a poll like we just did, but it's still valuable, right? It's still lots of the members of the community giving you their thoughts and perspectives on an issue, and it's a chance for them to have their voice heard. So we frequently will work to design one of those with the city and then put it out and promote it through your channels. Those are some tactics. We can always customize this approach as we get further into conversations with city staff about kind of what's the right fit for Hood River, but that's a lot of how we'd approach this in the past. And if we go to the last slide, you'll see here's 3 different projects that we worked on in the last couple of years. And I do want to make the point that I think this process, that community engagement communications, can make a real difference. You'll see on this slide that sometimes you'll see a difference of 10 percentage points, which, as you know from the polling we got today, depending on which package you go forward with, may be the difference between passing and not passing. So, you know, one of the most dramatic ones you'll see here is Urban Flood Safety Water Quality District. We worked with them in 2024. That is a new special district that covers Multnomah County along the Columbia River. But actually their district included all of Multnomah County. So you had a lot of voters who weren't even familiar with flood control. And as you can imagine, flood control was a fairly dense issue. You all are probably more familiar with it than most voters in Oregon, given where you're located. But a lot of that was doing large informational mailers to the community so they could really understand the nuances of what needed to happen along the Columbia River, why the special district had been created, and also using trusted messengers. So for instance, in that case, our research had found that having an engineer or a scientific expert was one of the best voices to put into the conversation. So the district's chief engineer was kind of front and center in that mailer. Second example, Tillamook Emergency Communications Bonds. As you can see, we did not move these numbers dramatically, but the really important thing we did do, and we did a variety of things, whether it was a radio ad or doing mailers to the community or digital advertising through this county's communications Facebook page, was preserve that majority. You know, they were at a bare minimum of 50%. As you'll see, as we moved from the initial polling to when it was actually on the ballot, opposition rose substantially. That is frequently the case in these ballot measures. We typically say if people weren't a yes at the start, you can win them over, but it's a lift. And on balance, most people are going to go in opposition. And that's absolutely what happened in Tillamook. As you can imagine, Tillamook is not the most tax-friendly part of the state. And so we were really happy to use our communication strategy to preserve that majority and get the measure passed. Last example, maybe not as happy of a story, but we did work last year with McMinnville to propose a Parks and Recreation bond. As you'll see, their initial polling showed they were in a real danger territory. They only had 43% support for the bond initially. We did a lot of communications work with them, including mailing, digital advertising. There's a really robust campaign. And they came up just short. They actually lost that measure by 20 votes. So I kind of debated putting it on here. But I think it still shows the overall trend that this public engagement and communications work really can help to move the public along. It's just a question of how much. And the good news for you all is, you know, all the polling numbers you saw today show you that you are at that threshold. You know, obviously the bond measure for housing starts are the best case. Always good to start over 50. But if you do, for a variety of reasons, choose to do one of the other models, they're all within striking distance. And I think these strategies are really valuable for helping the public understand the decision and why you're going forward with it. So I will finish my presentation. We can open up a conversation. Happy to talk through or address anything we can.
Yeah, thanks, Jake. And thank you, Maggie. Yeah, so just a couple additional comments to add. So my takeaway from looking at the poll is that all the options that we polled were net favorable, but only slightly so. And we're in a weak starting position no matter which option we choose. But we do have time for education and engagement, which is why I asked Jake to add those slides and really help you envision what that looks like. Once we do choose a path, we do have time now to do a lot of education. And interestingly, noted when we polled the police station bond in the first poll, sorry, I just got locked out here. There was 34% favorable, but in the second polling, when we got into discrete features and outcomes, it went up to 46% favorable. So it was almost it was about a 9-point increase in favorable when we got more detailed on what it includes. Yeah, time is of the essence. And what we're looking for is to get to a decision, support you in making a path forward, and do also note that choosing not to pursue a bond is also always an option as well. But with that, happy to answer any questions or support you in a decision.
Thank you, Will. All right, questions? Grant?
If we go back to the survey results for those three options, showing the favorability, like the red and blue chart that was shared earlier.
Yeah.
And I understand the sampling error was 4.9%. So if my memory of stats from a long time ago is correct me if I'm wrong, the standard deviation would be 2.45%. Is that accurate?
You following, Maggie? I'm going to look at you as a statistician.
Is it?
So the margin of error is going to be plus or minus 4.9 percentage points.
Yeah.
That is, yes.
Okay, so the standard deviation of that distribution of sampling would be 2.45%, right? So is there, based on your background. Is there a statistical significant difference in between the results of these results? Because as far as I can tell, it's just initially looking at those numbers, the standard deviations in between these is close enough that the question I have is there a statistically significant difference in between these results?
So there is, but just barely, right? So it is outside of the margin of error, but it's not dramatically so. When you have a margin of error plus or minus 4.9 percentage points, we are just outside of that in between these options, right? And in fact, the opposition numbers are not necessarily outside of the margin of error. When you look at the overall performance, that we do have a statistically significant difference in terms of the net yes. But as you noted, it's not a massive difference, right? We're sort of just outside of the margin of error here.
Yeah. Right. Thanks. That's my question.
Doug?
Thanks. Yeah, I think what I'd be interested to know is mainly around, I suppose this is for Will, just for us to understand the cost associated with the communication piece of it. I think it's going to be extremely important for both of those. For affordable housing, I think people want to know what that means. And I think, as we've talked before, laying out options, it could be going to a land trust or something similar to Mariposa Village, et cetera. Getting that out, I think, would be important. And also, as it comes to the police station, it's not like a library or something that people go to all the time. They probably have no idea, specifically what the conditions are. How, certainly people seem to be just, pretty hesitant to spend money on public projects like that because they figure, oh, it must be fine, and they just want a nicer one. We really have seen that it's not, but we're not going to be able to give everybody a tour. So I think really understanding the communications plan for me and what methods would be used. I'm encouraged to see, sort of where things landed and, in other cities and with their measures and other municipalities and their measures. But I think we'd really have to understand, what is the lift going to be, how much it's going to cost, et cetera. Because to me, that's like the last mile for us to really move the needle on all that. I guess I'm, I'm just digesting this right now as we've just seen it, but, not unsurprised. But I think to Will's point, as we got more context into the police station, we saw the favorability go up. So I think communication is the only opportunity for us to really do that. So see it as a key element.
Yeah. But was that, or I can maybe take a stab at answering that question. Okay.
I don't know if it's a question. It's more of an observance. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's going to vary significantly between the housing and police station. So police station is much more of a discrete, easily understood. We know what we're doing. We have architectural cost estimates. Housing, on the other hand, is a black box right now. And there's going to be a significantly more work in engagement to define and start filling that box with particulars. We haven't created that whole engagement plan yet, because we have a chicken or the egg problem with, we need to know the direction before we put together, the budget and the approach. But with that too, I don't know, Jake, do you have any advice you give to local governments as far as budgeting for at this point in the election process for a city our size?
We always try to work within your means, and I will say, frequently come to this conversation with a number of options. Some costs are pretty fixed, right? I can't make the post office charge you less to send something in the mail. And we can do numbers and say, this is how many registered voters you have. This is how many households we'd have to send to, and help you work through some fixed costs. Some are options, right? Video production does cost more. As you can obviously imagine, it takes more to produce a 30-second video than it does to put together a mailer. But it also can be really powerful, with the Tillamook emergency radio system, to your point earlier, it wasn't like we went into the, emergency communications office and are like, here's the stuff, see, it's old. Like, no one would have been able to understand that. And so instead, we use community members to talk about the impact, how it tied into the emergency medical response, how it tied into fire, a law enforcement kind of, so we had different voices from the community kind of saying this is the impact here. And so, maybe if we do the police station, we do a bit of kind of like, and here's how I have to work, and here we are cramped up with each other. And when we have this kind of situation, it's hard to be able to do an effective interview. And we can work with the kind of city staff to kind of think about that story. Or if we go the housing route, it may be more of trying to find different community members to talk about the challenge of housing affordability right now, or the opportunities as we kind of talk about those different options for what the bond could be used, of how it could make an impact. So always want to work with you and kind of figure out what makes sense for you. We work we work backwards from what do we think is the budget that's available, or we have some different options, and then we find the right approach. And we work with big and small localities, and we're happy to figure out what's the right fit for you and get you the best bang for your buck. If it's really, we can do some Facebook posts, and we want to jump in next door and get in those conversations. Can you just help us think through that strategy? We're happy to do it. Obviously, I love being able to do something that we can put directly in front of people through digital advertising or mail, but sometimes that's not realistic. So we'll come back with some thoughts to Will, but I don't think we'll be like, this is the only way to go. It'll be a conversation to figure out what works for you.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Yeah, and to that point about communication, one of the things that, and I know you couldn't have a laundry list in there of everything that's wrong with the police station, but one of the things that unless it was in there and I missed it, was kind of surprised to not see, was the mention of water not being potable in the police station. Like, I think that if you went to voters who are like, yeah, they can't drink the water in the police station, that would be a really significant, glaring description of the level of problems that are there. So if we do move forward with the police station element of the bond, like, would definitely want to see that as one of the chief things that's communicated, because I think that's pretty striking in terms of something that's not available in a workspace. And also, I know that there was kind of discussion about this last time. I think Council President Rivera brought it up, but I do wonder that if, in terms of, this, I would say, kind of not great support for what we're proposing as of right now, is if people do have hesitance about this because of other potential bonds that are out there, or the, just general nature of the economy. And I wonder if, we get to that final summer poll, if it's worth maybe including something on there, because at that point we may have, parks on May, which will either, that'll be done at that point one way or the other, and then potentially school in the fall. And I think that we might have a even better sense of what people are willing to support, because sometimes it doesn't matter whether the idea is good or not. You get to a point sometimes where people are just like, I just can't do this. I don't feel like I can support this just based on how things are right now. So I feel like it might be good to include something that isn't even about the bond, the nature of the bond itself, but what is the willingness of voters to just support something in general.
So I think Jake had mentioned that he's recommending another poll as we go, and you're not setting a final direction tonight. You're setting the broad categories of what we're going to invest in, and we're going to refine this over the next few months. So yeah, there will be a reason to do another poll before we finalize the ballot title. But I might also just counsel that, trying to game out the kind of palace intrigue of the political strategy is not going to be, I don't think, successful over the long term. I think you put out to the voters what you can full-throatedly say that is needed, and it's their choice at the end of the day. If they don't feel like they have enough money to support a pool bond and a police station remodel and housing and a school district, that's their choice. It's not necessarily a reflection or mean that we failed in any way. So I wouldn't say that, we get wrapped around trying to game this out to ensure a win. I don't think there's any ensuring a win. There's just accurately communicating and giving the choice to the voters.
I understand that, but it is one of the things that we're discussing about whether we are gonna go out for one in November. And one of those considerations is other municipal or other taxing districts going out for that. I totally understand what you're saying. Sometimes you just gotta let it play out, excuse me. But I think it's worth throwing a question on there just to see what kind of feedback we get.
I was curious, I think Maggie, you said that kind of the rough costs were $16 for the combo of the police station and affordable housing, and $8 if we went one or the other. How long was that for? How long was the bond for when you calculated that out?
Oh, I'll answer that because I did the calculation.
Oh, okay.
20 years.
20 years?
Mhm.
Okay. And yeah, in the whole, to Councilman Mitchell's point of, you know, what are the communication strategies and what are people's appetites for being able to pay for this? I think part of the spin, and this is something that you guys, you know, that Jake and his team would maybe do too in the communication side is, and I've heard you use this word too, Will, it's really an investment. Like sometimes when the economy is not looking as good, that's really when you do want to make investments and put your money into something sound. And I think investing in both housing and our police is a sound strategy. So I don't know if we got to the point where we're talking about what we're in support of, but I like the combo.
Amanda?
Can you tell me what the like per thousand is for those?
Oh, gosh. Yes. I think it's about 45 cents per 100,000 or per thousand for each of them. So then let me double check that before.
Is that for like the two smaller ones, the 8 and then
Yeah, that's what I see, the 45 cents per thousand for the
Yes.
$8.60.
combo one would be
Mhm.
like 90 cents? And
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
that's good. If both are under $1 like that.
Yeah, and those are the high, that's the high estimates rounded up. So we wanted to kind of do the very worst case financial scenario when we were polling it.
Thank you. The only other additional question or just comment that I want to make is, you know, we understand how we'd use $9 million for a police department. I too would like to better understand how we would use $9 million for housing. And, you know, I like the idea of the combo, but back to Ben's point, there's also an opportunity to do an additional polling in the summer as well. And I'm not saying yay or nay, but that is another option, given that I heard today that Norcor is also going to go out for a potential bond as well. And so we're going to have competing agencies that are going to go out and trying to make really good cases for that. I would lean on maybe having a smaller bond rather than a larger bond. So I help us understand what we do with $9 million and how would we communicate that?
Yeah, thank you so much. So the 9 million, there's no magic behind it. What I did was I looked at Portland's housing bond and what they approved. And then what would that rate produce for us if we did a similar mill rate that the city of Portland when they did their housing bond? Let's see, it's maybe too deep in your packet, but there's the fact sheet from the affordable housing option. Let's see, page 21 of
Page
your
21.
packet. Yeah. And so I have there like how many units. So I looked, Metro and Portland advertise how many units they've created and versus how big their bond size was. So I divided how much it cost them to create a unit versus what we were able to achieve with Mariposa Village. So if we can replicate Mariposa Village, we'd be able to do 660 units with $9 million. If we were more at this, what Portland and Metro is doing would be more like 70 units. So just, it's really, you know, how can you project? Are we going to strike lightning again with Mariposa Village? Do we even want to do another LIHTC deal, or would we perhaps use this for land acquisition for community land trust? Do we want to do like a Tillamook County model and create our own nonprofit and get into developing housing ourselves. There's really, the spectrum is so wide at this point. I'm sorry if that wasn't a great
No,
answer.
that's okay. And the reason that I brought it up, and some of my peers may or may not know, Abigail and I had a chance to go on the radio today with Mark Bailey, and that was actually one of the questions that was brought up is, how would you spend this dollar? And I said the same exact thing. Well, we can put X amount towards a land acquisition, X amount to a public-private partnership. There's a lot of different ways. And then as I mentioned that, I thought, okay, well, we have this that just says the total number of houses, but we've never really thought about or done a deeper dive around how much would it be for land acquisition versus replicating some of our other projects that we've done.
Well,
Yeah, oh, go ahead, please.
I was just going to add to that. I think that'll be a really interesting opportunity for community engagement. My intuition is this polling shows, yeah, I think housing's an issue. It's really costly. I'd like you guys to figure that out without necessarily being wedded to any particular model about how to do that. And your bond counsel will inevitably tell you, yes, give some specificity to how you spend this money, but don't shackle yourself to something that then 5 years from now you feel like, oh, we really wish we could use this bond money for this. So I think that's an important thing for us to explore in those engagement conversations is how much do people want to say, look, I know you need to deal with this area. Tell me about how you're going to approach the problem. What are the values? What is the approach you're going to take? Versus I want to see, blueprints in a highly specific plan. And so that's the other thing we can also help you answer and kind of help you make an informed decision on is how much specificity you want to give around these numbers.
I had a comment that was almost exactly that. And the second comment that I had, so thank you. And the second comment I had, just, based on what I heard from Will and just kind of the nature of Oregon, I was having, a catch up with a friend that lives in Portland, Multnomah County, et cetera. And, I mean, it's being that 5 and 50 are the way that they are, this is how we do things in Oregon. And we're going to have competing bond measures probably all the time, being that we're seeing less and less, sort of federal assistance in some areas, and states' budgets are tight, and et cetera, right? So I think that there's not going to be a magic time where we're like, well, it's I think the sort of data that we saw earlier about historically how much people have been paying, related to what they're paying for bonds, that was really helpful information, but even given that information, it's kind of like, yeah, I mean, my head's sort of in the same place as Gladys's, where it's like maybe that $9 million for housing can slide somehow or whatnot. But I think, these are things that we know based on lots of conversations, lots of research that the city desperately needs. So I think we just, there's not a great time to do it ever. So we can't really consider the other bond measures when we're making the decision. We have to consider the issues that face us and what we propose to address those issues.
Well,
What direction do you go for it?
I was gonna say, I think that's a great point. And of course, in the communications engagement work, we can say, none of this will get cheaper if we wait, right? The longer we wait to do construction or do this other work, it's going to cost more. And so we're trying to do it now and get you the best bang for your buck while we can. But that's the point of doing that poll before you finally have to make that final decision to refer to the voters is they might say, I don't care how good of a deal this is. It's not the right time for me. And so it's a give and take conversation, I think.
Amanda?
Yeah, I guess I'm just kind of just getting all this information tonight. It's really hard for me to know what I want to do going forward, but it would also help to know, I know we don't have the money to do the police station without a bond, but I know there's the grant that we could get. Are there other ideas if we just do the housing on the bond, how we could help the police station in other ways? Because I still think that's really important, and I don't just want to leave them out to just suffer in your space. It's an important thing. So yeah, I'd just be curious to know what other options might look like since the housing was more favorable. I mean, I would love to do both of them, but I don't know if that's the best way to go, so.
Yeah, there's the organ seismic grant, but we need to come up with the rest of it. I think that was like, don't remember how much it was. Yeah, thank you. So there's that grant, and I understand that's pretty, people who apply for it get it, is from what we've heard from the architects. On top of that, you know, this is just how police stations, fire stations are built. We've gone out for bonds for 2 different fire stations in the span of never having a police station. You know, we put in evidence handling hoods, you know, so we, you know, could help ventilate out a little bit better. But, you know, it's awkward kind of patches like that. You know, they've got secondhand donated furniture, we could buy them new furniture and that would be nice, but it doesn't fix that they don't have good ingress egress. They doesn't fix that they have not enough square footage. Like anything substantial is going to be substantial dollars too, and bonds are just really the way that we can raise enough revenue.
Will, if I could jump in on that, I think the other question we'll get for funding, and it's a really good one, is what about the state? And I think that's a tough ask. I think there's a lot of requests at the state level for earmarks. I don't know that they do a lot of funding of police stations. And in this county, the county is, of course, really seeking state funding for a courthouse. And so, again, when you think about other agencies and their needs, I think looking to the state for funding outside of the seismic grant would be really a narrow possibility for us.
So others weren't on council when the recommendations that I'm about to bring up were made, but I'm trying to understand, just to follow up on Counselor Gaige's comment. In the past, council has expressed, okay, given this might not be the right time for police to go out for a bond, what other, can we rent additional space? Like, how can we open that up? And those options were never followed up on. So I'm not saying we shouldn't. What are the additional options that we have to broaden up the space, potentially rent a different location for where victims are coming in? I mean, those have been proposed in the past. And so I'm trying to understand what would be the potential options moving forward.
Yeah, and I think the chief is on as well and can chime in as
Is there?
too. He's better.
And I,
He's in.
and I don't know the specific numbers, but I would want to note any space that we were to rent is not designed for law enforcement. And so there would be significant tenant improvements required in order to make that happen. I think the county has been looking at that for a public safety space and has found that to be a really high price tag. So we could certainly, if you wish to not pursue police, facility at this time, we can research that. But I do think it is not a small number.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what I was gonna say. We can do tenant improvements to the space we already own, or we can rent someplace and do tenant improvements. It's not gonna change that neither space is made to be a police department. Yeah.
And I completely hear that and understand that's factual information, just bringing up additional context that in the past, when the council found that it wasn't the most appropriate time to go for a bond for a police station, there were other options that were discussed. Those options were not followed through, and I don't understand the price tag. So just following up on Counselor Gaige's comment is, what would be the price tag? And then that helps us better understand what we want to go for and then potential additional polling in the summer.
Chief, I think it would be the same cost plus rent, because there is no other facility. But if we had if there was some class A office space, maybe it would be cheaper than remodeling the basement of a 100-year-old building. But
at the end of the day, if you're looking at a police function building, like any organization, you're still gonna have to upgrade it to the actual specs that a police department functions as. I would hate for such a small organization be split and say 2 people work over here. I think we thought about that in other ways when we were looking in the upstairs. And we thought that wasn't the best function for the community, is i.e. even the actual employees. So either way, if you rent a space, your costs, like Will had stated, is gonna be the same. You're still gonna have to do bulletproof glass. You're gonna have to still have secure doorways. You're still gonna have to have evidence lockers and processing through that. And so really what you're doing is, as some of you had said, I think, is we're going to give that money to the landlord, basically to upgrade a building and upgrade the needs that it gets, where we, at the end of the day, you really don't foresee anything and recoup that cost in the future. So we're gonna just kick that can completely down the road continuously until we bring some ownership within the city to decide, do we want to remodel the piece of property that we have today? So that we own, so.
And it may not be satisfactory, but I think the one thing that we did do after that council direction is look into buying a hood for evidence processing. So that was something.
All right. So what I think I'm hearing you say, Will, is do we move forward on a combo? Do we move forward on an individual? Is that the direction that you're looking for from us tonight?
Yes, I get a suggested motion on page 16, and it's to select the targets. And I would note that if you choose both, they don't necessarily have to be as a package. They could be two separate ballot titles. That's something we can work out.
All right. Do we want to make a motion, or do we want to thumbs up how we're feeling around a combo versus an individual? Grant?
If you want to make a motion, we can certainly make a motion. Just before we get that far, I'd just like to point out that in our original packet, when we discussed this 2 weeks ago, the scores for the large one that had everything in it are about the same as the ones that we just tested as well. So this, correct me if I'm wrong, there may not be a statistical difference in between those options in our survey results. So if we choose any of those options, we may be working from the same starting point, no matter which option we choose, whether it be the largest package or the smallest.
And the first one included safe routes.
Safe routes and the public
MCAC,
works.
Public Works, in addition to that.
Yes.
So thank you for bringing that information up. Grant, that's important. Ben?
Oh, I was just saying I'd be down for discussing a little bit, just because for me, the initial round was more about like talking about the poll at hand. And Councilor Gagey, you already stated somebody said team combo, I don't remember who said that. For me, I'm also down for the combo. As Councilor Paulson brought up, the initial polling was stronger for the combo, and there was research that like voters traditionally are more in support of things that have multiple or larger projects that have more components to it. I think both are extremely important. Obviously, the police station, that issue has been a long-going issue, and as Chief just brought up, like even if we, didn't end up moving forward with that ballot, like we'd still have a city building that's not in good shape that needs to be dealt with really at some point. So and I would also, the fact that there's $2 million attached to it that we would likely get in terms of a grant, like leaving that money out there is also something that would not sit well with me. So I like the idea of going with both. I do think it is a challenge to not have something finite about housing, and I think that one, could potentially have a little bit more wiggle room in terms of what the dollar amount ends up being, since it isn't as well defined. But I'm in favor of the combo. And I think compared to some of the other, we're gonna talk about other ballot measures, compared to some of the other ballot measures that are out there, 18 million is a lot cheaper than what some other, talking gorge wide, other entities are doing. So
Could I make one comment? Sorry, just before we get any further, I just wanted to note that when we talked about 45 cents per thousand, just you all know this, but for our audience of thousands of people out there watching right now and later, is that is 45 cents per assessed, or per thousand is assessed value, not real market value. So when you think of what your house might sell for, that's not what we use. We use what has been assessed, like, and you can see that on your property taxes. So just wanted to get that out there as you continue your conversation. Thank you.
So something you just said piqued my interest, like, what if there were two ballot measures? I think that, I'm not saying that should double the cost necessarily, but I just I'm trying to find a common theme between the two of them, other than they're both city needs. They're both very unique city needs, you know? So like, how do we have a unifying message with the both of them? So at least the prospect that we could have, you know, maybe two communicated simultaneously, but two ballot measures that are unique is enticing to me. Is that something that we would need to decide tonight if we went for the combo, as people are calling it?
No, I think that's what we would do with the summer poll
Okay.
that Jake was talking about, because that's what's going to inform the final ballot construction. Jake, do you agree?
Yeah, nothing needs to be set in stone until that referral. And, you know, I think you could package them together under the kind of banner of like a affordability and safety bond, but happy to kind of workshop that and continue to work with you all as we kind of figure out the right ingredients that make the most sense.
Okay.
I'll just add that it would definitely be our recommendation that we test ballot language for the bond in that summer poll, because that is not something that was done in the polls to date. We tested concepts, which is wonderful. We know that the one piece of information that every voter actually gets is what's written on their ballot. And so that's best practice to test that as well.
Okay.
Would there be an increased cost in having two separate entries on the,
Minimal.
okay,
Yeah.
what's minimal?
I think, yeah, just turning in paperwork, filing fees.
I think one thing we should consider if we decide to go that route, and I know we're still like we're just discussing, but when a single entity has two options, we should be prepared for somebody to say, "Oh, I'll go with yes on one and no on the other," like split the baby, like, you know, and that would be a bummer. But I guess maybe it would be better to have one thing pass and not either of them. I don't know, but that's something that we'll all want to talk about and consider later. Disappointing. Like, I think that's what, you know, I've seen traditionally, and actually I'd be curious if Jake, as a consultant, maybe you've witnessed that too. I don't know. But I think that's something we would want to be cautious of.
It absolutely happens. I will say though, I'm always surprised because I'm here in Portland and I'll look and, you know, we've got 4 tax measures on the ballot. I'm like, well, surely the least persuasive one won't pass. Like everyone will take that off the list and no, they all pass here, but that's my problem, not yours. So yeah, I think there is definitely a calculus, particularly if you're hearing from the voters of I'm just tapped out, you know, like that's what we saw in the polling. Was not anyone thought these were particularly bad ideas. It was just, I can't afford this right now. And I'll just say, you know, and Maggie will probably correct me because I'm like the qualitative person than the quantitative person. You know, looking at the last round of polling and this round of polling, if you pass a bond, it's going to be driven first and foremost by Democratic voters, which are a significant share of the electorate there, and to a lesser extent, independent voters. You know, you will get some Republicans, but we found is that none of these packages were particularly enticing to Republicans. Raising and lowering the cost did not really shift where they were. And so it's really about what motivates and excites those Democrats and independents to vote yes. And I think what we've seen most clearly in both polling is housing is what excites them most right now. And so that doesn't mean that has to be the only thing it talks about. It's just that's the easiest path to a victory, is saying, well, we know this is the top tier issue and the top thing that motivates you right now. Let's just focus on that. But, you know, to your point, the previous polling that we did last round, where we had a grab bag and we had all 4 different ideas, there was something for everybody in that. And so that's part of the reason you may remember that last poll, housing was only in the kind of full meal deal. And so that's not surprising to me that that kind of helped boost that. But it wasn't like the other packages weren't of interest to people. It's just as you're kind of narrowing down and saying, well, what's most important to me? Housing rises to the top of the pile.
And I'll just add, that is something that also we could address in that summer polling, is how those two interact if they were separate. I will say that we have other clients, school districts, that have had a levy and a bond on the same ballot at the same time. And that's something that we explicitly tested in their poll, was how do those two interact? Are there folks who vote yes on just one, and if so, which one? That's something that can be explicitly sort of tested scientifically in a subsequent poll.
And yeah, I understand your point too. I just wanted to make sure we didn't have to debate that today. Like it's an option, but like we don't have to debate it today.
Since you asked. I guess after this discussion, I feel better about going for both of them. Because of the fact that whether we're asking for everything or one thing, it's kind of this, we're starting from kind of the same point. So I think both of really are really important, and I don't think that we should leave one behind. So that's kind of my 2 cents.
Sure, we can all share opinions. Yeah, I mean, other people have said similar things. I look at this sort of a different perspective than my peers. I look at it more in terms of the expectations or demands or value that the public wants us to deliver on. And based on these survey results I see here, it appears to me that the public expects us to deliver on safe facilities in which our staff needs to work in, as well as adequate housing and the overlying infrastructure that may deliver on those 2 things. So I am in favor of combining both of them together if we're just talking about housing and police and running with that. One thing that I would add to consideration is that if we just go with those 2 things and move forward, and that becomes our practice, there will be additional services or demands on service inherent in just effectuating those things. And so if we are going to move forward with that as a strategy long term, we would need to consider other ways to address the additional demands on services such as roads, sidewalks, pipes, what have you. And that may not be a question for this particular bond, but that will be an increasing need that these sorts of decisions will generate for long-term, perhaps future councils. But if the more those considerations could be integrated in these bonds, great. But if we just want to move forward with just housing and police, and that's favorably what we receive, it's wonderful too. So.
Thank you. I hear what Counselor Polson is mentioning, and yeah, I think if we have additional dollars for housing and police, what does that mean as far as like workforce capacity that we have now, right? Do we have the budget to hire more planners? Do we have the budget to hire more police overall to meet updated spaces and whatnot? And at the same time, I also think about when I look at the data that's presented to us, the data tells us that housing is the highest priority above the rest, over 51%. And so I'm struggling with all of that information. I would be open to pursuing both options right now, but that we have a summer poll and that we also talk about the idea of splitting the bonds at some point, because I'd rather have a bond, something pass, rather than nothing at all. And I am worried about an 18 million bond. While it's definitely going to be one of the cheaper ones compared to the others, I just feel that we're competing against schools. We're going to be competing against the school district, and that folks are going to have a really hard time deciding. And so I feel like they might say, okay, I'd rather give some money here, some money there. $16 may not be a whole lot to us, but when you're piling up, the pool infrastructure that's falling apart, I really struggle. And so I feel like normally I can make decisions and I can't. I'm open to doing the combo and looking at more information, but that we do have another poll in the summer, and at that time, understand should we have two separate bonds.
Sorry, make this easy. I move that city council select the housing and the police option, and moving forward with that for now is anticipated investment targets for a November 2026 bond election, and direct staff to return with public education and engagement plan. That may be split in the future, but that's what the motion is for now.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Counselor Polson, second by Counselor, wow, I'm forgetting everyone's name. Cavallari, all those in favor?
Aye.
Yes. All right, motion passes. Thank you, Will.
And thank you online.
Yes, thanks for joining us today. All right. City manager comments.
Thank you, Council President Rivera. A couple updates. I think, first of all, some updates on immigration enforcement work that we've been doing, you've been doing, and the city staff have been doing. At the last meeting, you adopted a policy for staff that we had crafted. So now we are in the process of implementing that and training that with staff. So I think we have about 10 trainings scheduled that the HR manager and I will be attending with staff. They have really good concrete questions about what immigration enforcement looks like and how it might impact their work. So I'm really happy to be doing those trainings. I'm continuing to work with the Next Door about scheduling listening sessions in a town hall. I've given them a scope of work. They've given me something back, given them some comments on that, hoping to sign a contract with them this week. Once we have some possible dates identified, I will reach out to all of you for scheduling because I know you are super busy folks. But really looking forward to getting those done and hearing from the community. Sanctuary City Resolution, you adopted that at your last meeting. It took us a little while to get that posted because we were waiting for the Spanish translation from Code Publishing. That's how our ordinances and resolutions are put on our website. And this is fairly new for Code Publishing to translate our materials and post them. I think this is only the second resolution we've done that. So that took them a little while, but once we got that on our social media, and we will continue to publicize that, put out a press release. So I've heard from some of you that you're looking for more social media posts and more videos. We've been doing roughly every other week on our social media, and so some of that has been just announcements or posts, and then some have been videos. So, but I've definitely heard that. And we'll try to include more videos in our updates. Jackie, our Vanderpoy, our community engagement coordinator, and I talked today about some good examples we've seen from other cities. And so if you see good examples, pass them on, and we will keep working on that. And then in other topics, but public doesn't know yet, that we had a successful fire chief recruitment. Josh Rogers from the city of Dallas will be joining us. I keep saying the Dallas, but he's from the city of Dallas. He's a deputy fire chief there. He will be joining us starting February 9th. And Chief Damien's last day will be February 13th. So those two will have a week of overlap. And then Chief Damien is willing to continue to work with us to ensure a smooth transition. So very excited to have that position filled. And then a couple of you asked me about the hotel, the Marriott proposal, which was at the Planning Commission. Planning Commission had recommended denying that. So the next step is at their February 2nd meeting, the Planning Commission needs to adopt those findings to make it official. And then the applicants have 12 days to appeal after the notice of decision is mailed to them. So that is the timeline that they are working on.
Could they have appealed prior to that, or are they obligated to appeal after that period?
I think they have to wait until the Planning Commission has adopted their findings, because the Planning Commission has not taken an official action until they adopt the findings. And so I don't know that they have something to appeal yet at this point because it's not been written.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Committee reports. Oh, Dan, did you have something to mention?
No, that's correct. They don't have anything to appeal yet. So it's sometime before this comes before you, if ever.
Thank you, Dan.
I don't have anything.
Region 1 Act meets next Monday.
No committee reports for me this time around.
Nothing for me.
Ditto.
I do have a couple reports. So I had a chance to watch the Hood River County Commissioners meeting. There was a lot of information, two big ones. We had our district attorney, Matt Ellis, talking about financial support that is needed for an additional DUI attorney. I believe that he will come to us at some point, so I'm certain he might be reaching out to Abigail to give us that information. My understanding is that he is looking for financial support and that it would be a cost that the county and the city would potentially split, a total of $160,000 to pay for an attorney that whose grant will end, I believe, this next coming year. So I expect that based off of that conversation, that will get brought back to this council and presented where we can decide what to do. In addition to that, there is also an update from Norcor. It sounds like they are having some significant funding challenges and looking to potentially go up for a bond as well. There was a Saruta Sister City meeting that took place. There will be students that are going to be visiting Hood River March 13th through the 19th. There is a planned Hood River to Saruta trip that will take place in August. That date has not been finalized. Taste of Saruta would happen either March 7th through the 14th or potentially the 14th and the 15th. There would be an adult Saruta trip from Hood River to Saruta in the summer of 2027. And we have MCAC tomorrow, so I will give you an update at our next meeting. Council comments. Anna, do you want to start us off?
One thing I wanted to pass on was just that Congresswoman Maxine Dexter will be here in person for our town hall this Saturday at 11 a.m. at the Y East Middle School Performing Arts Center. It's located at 3000 Y East Road in Odell, and this is a fantastic opportunity for all of us who are feeling frustrated and concerned about how our federal government is handling many things. This is a great chance for us to tell her so she can affect some change at that federal level. And maybe we could think of something positive to tell her too. I don't know what that is at the moment, but it's always nice to try to be nice. I think the other item was that at our November 24th meeting, we were looking at Module 4 of the zoning code update, and I had brought up the idea of maybe inviting, builders to come talk to council. I wanted to thank Dustin and Nikki for getting me some numbers for what, and I don't know if that got shared everywhere, but that just like permits and COs that have been issued over the last 5 years, just to kind of see if there was a trend. I think affordable housing is still a big, obviously, from our conversation tonight, a big priority for this council. And I think that, again, while we're looking at the zoning code, this is an opportunity to really understand from people who are building in our community, and it might not have anything to do with the zoning code, but if we have a better understanding of what the hurdles are to providing more inventory for our community of housing options, maybe we can try to fix that right now while we're doing zoning code stuff, or at least address it. I think there's an overlap there. And I just would still want to go back to that idea of have, some conversations, whether it's a work session or a council meeting or a side group or whatever. I just want to get back to that. Those are it.
Nothing from me.
I'm sorry, I wanted to mention, Councilor Cavalieri had asked for, and I think some of you knew, some permit data. I shared the kind of raw data with her. I was hoping to write a memo and send it to the rest of you, but I will certainly send that out. I'll send that out tomorrow, so that you all have that information. I'm sorry for that delay. I just haven't written the cover memo.
Okay, so I'm gonna, for my comments, make a statement. And I know that the council president, Class Rivera, thank you for leading this tonight. I know it's the times that I've had to run these things, like, like it's like, thank you Gladys for doing this tonight. Thank you, Mayor Paul, if you're listening, if you're following along. It's hard to be able to compartmentalize. But something that Councilor Rivera is going to propose for her council comments. I want to make a statement about that so that we can gauge. I want to start with an excerpt from Mayor Jacob Fry's press conference following the murder of Alex Preddy. The quote is, "To everyone listening, stand with me, stand with Minneapolis, stand up for America. Recognize that your children will ask what side you were on. Your grandchildren will ask you what you did to act to prevent this from happening again. What did you do to protect your city? What did you do to protect your nation?" So the city of Hood River cannot stop ICE from entering our town. Our police cannot prevent the unconstitutional fascist sort of ICE Gestapo tactics from violating our residents' due process. However, through the extensive research by our city manager, our council president, myself, the rest of the councilors, we're beginning to understand the most impactful ways in which we can fight really this unprecedented evil. The first is to work with local organizers who are on the front lines of this battle. I was encouraged to hear, testimony earlier from Tamira, but our participation in the county Partners Collaborative is a good way to start. Our emergency declaration has allowed our city manager to contract with the Nextdoor to facilitate listening sessions that'll be forthcoming. Abigail's done a tremendous amount of work that's probably going to aid a lot of Oregon cities via the League of Oregon Cities to understand what cities' role can be in this fight, right? We continue to work with other cities to understand their approaches. I know Hillsborough came up earlier, where they've had success in aiding individuals and businesses impacted by this ICE invasion. We've heard a lot from our district attorney, and I've spoken with him again recently. He's committed to helping document these atrocities within Hood River. Where I feel like we're falling short is really the communications plan to inform the public about what we've learned, what our city police is able to learn about each incident, what our police do or do not or cannot do when ICE is in Hood River, what the city can and cannot do when ICE is in Hood River. So with some of the materials provided by Council Rivera on a communications plan and social media strategy, I'd like us to consider these options tonight to build a framework of communication that can serve the residents of Hood River's needs during this unprecedented attack on our residents and on our democracy. And furthermore, I'd propose that we would have a dedicated item on each city council meeting to discuss, ICE kidnapping events, our progress on action items related to this response, and proposal of new items to address. And again, I want to thank the city staff for the time they've spent to date across the city staff, across the police. But we also need them to have time to run the city, right? So if they are overwhelmed, I would like to understand how we can use council resources or funds via the emergency declaration to hire contractors to assist us in this effort. And I just checked our Facebook post that was, roughly 11 days, as you mentioned, because we were waiting for the translation. We're at like 1,000 not comments, likes, mostly likes, hearts, that sort of stuff. That's a tremendous amount of engagement that I feel like if we had more of a social media presence, whether it's just for the city or what I'd like is aided by the council as well. It just seems to be the way that Hood River communicates. And I think we need to, lean into that. Not every neighborhood or city or demographic communicates as much as they do in Hood River on social media. Hood River tends to get a lot of the information out about this particular event that happened related to this via social media. Thanks for listening to all that.
Thank you. Grant?
More brief from me. Let's see. I agree with Councilor Cavallari that we have opportunity in addressing housing through zoning and our code audit work. So I view that as an opportunity to actually address some of the problems that the actual goal one that we've have on our work plan, that we've had on our work plan as long as I've been a counselor, of addressing housing. And the other thing that I had that hasn't been shared yet is I am now co-chair for the Bridge Authority. So I'll be doing that for the next 2 years. That's it.
I just wanted to thank Jessica Salas for coming tonight, and I've had the opportunity to chat with her a little bit, and I think she's great, and I encourage everybody to kind of chat and with her if you feel so inclined, and at least dig into a little bit what she stands for, because it's awesome. All right, thank you.
Okay, so I just wanted to, I brought this up a little bit in our last council meeting. You know, I was born and raised here, and when I was growing up, I felt like specifically to immigration, that our city leadership just didn't always speak up during difficult moments, and that there were long stretches of silence, even when many families were scared and uncertain. And I just want to again continue to express gratitude and sincerely thank this council for being willing to do something and to say something, because it truly matters. It sends a message that our local government sees people, that we hear them, and that we understand that it is our responsibility to the community that we serve. So this brings me to the importance of communication. It is in times like these that we need clear, accurate, and consistent communication from the city. And this isn't just helpful, it's essential. It's essential. As Councilor Stepina, we see that there's a lot of interaction. We need to ensure that we're getting messages out in a timely manner. And I understand that we had to wait 11 days, but that's an inequity to me, and that's not okay. I think it's really important that we have clarity around the roles and the authority, that we need to be explicit about which agencies have authority and what their limitations are, like our city police, city staff and public works, the county sheriff, our state police and forest service, and federal agencies, that we can clearly identify the difference of what they look like, what their uniforms look like, so that residents clearly understand that city police do not enforce federal immigration laws unless there's a judicial warrant, and understand the process. That distinction truly does matter, and it needs to be stated plainly. Second, it's important that we have a know your rights information, and I appreciate the comment that was brought up earlier on its importance, and that it needs to be in both English and in Spanish. There are already many know your rights guidances. We would just have to replicate what already exists. If ICE comes to someone's home or workplace, people do not open the door unless there's a court order signed by a judge, and it's important that we help them understand what that looks like. People do not need to volunteer information about immigration status or place of birth, and the city does not ask any resident those questions for any of our services. So they should not present false documents or sign anything without any sort of legal counsel. These messages should be community-facing, easy to understand, and shared in both English and in Spanish so that they actually reach the people who need them. Third, consistency across all channels. Messaging should be uniform across city social media platforms, the website, police communication platforms, and bilingual press releases. The goal is to ensure that residents are not confused by mixed messages or information. This is another way that we establish trust with our community, that they are learning factual information from their local government. And finally, that we have a trauma-informed tone. Our language should be calming and fact-based, not fear-driven. Phrases like, here's what you can do, here's what your rights are under the law, and here's how to reach support, help people feel grounded and informed. Again, I want to thank the council for stepping into this moment. We need to be clear, compassionate, and consistent with our communications. That is one of the most important tools that we have right now. And I would be open to continuing our community engagement strategy that we've been talking about for a long time, in addition to zoning and code audit and some of the other TSP work, overall tracking the success of our work plan, understanding where our bottlenecks, so that gets back to the zoning piece, and to develop true key performance indicators that help us track that success so that we know where have we been effective in our policies, where can we do better, because in the end, we are accountable to our constituents, and that this is a way that we can do that. So it's important that we have messaging that is clear for folks and would also be open to having more of these discussions during our retreat so that we truly are focusing on how can we be an effective council, continue celebrating our successes, and then understand areas that we need to do better. Comment? No, no.
Question. So, based on what you said, I would propose to the council that we work to adopt something within that framework based off, Gladys's opening comments on it. I don't know if council, comments is the best time to discuss this kind of stuff, but I don't want to sit much longer on this. I'm not sure what you're hearing from your part of the constituency, but people want more communication from us. So I don't want to tell them, wait 6 months. I feel like, I don't know if people have thoughts on how to proceed with it, but if it's not tonight, we certainly, in my opinion, need an agenda item on the next city council meeting to talk about it.
Sorry, can you hear me now? Okay. That we have asked this in several meetings, right? And trying to better understand some of what you mentioned earlier. If there are bottlenecks, do we need to outsource our communication so that we can have timely, like, what does that look like? I think overall, we haven't given clear direction or talked about what our strategy is. Like, if we have an action item on today's agenda, what does the timeline look like for follow-up or for successful social media implementation? Is that a week? Is that a couple of days? Like, I think that's the type of clarity that we need to give to staff or that general understanding is once we sign something, how soon do we give an update to our constituents so that they understand? Because there's been confusion around what does an emergency declaration mean? And that was even brought up at the county commissioners meeting, right? Like, what does that mean? What does that allow folks to do? What is a sanctuary city? What does it do? What does it not do? This is all information that when folks don't have that, they just lead into assumptions. And that's where I think that we just need to be really clear. I would look to Abigail on what is it that the city or staff needs in order to do that. But I think we've all said it in the last couple of meetings, we need clear communications about these 4 things that I brought up and that it hasn't happened. And so the intention isn't to place blame, but we're going to continue to have more things that come up. We're talking about polling, right? What is an accurate or a justifiable timeline for turnaround for some of this messaging? And so I maybe look to Abigail on what is it that you feel that you need from us to have a better understanding, at least around these communication efforts. And then I strongly suggest that at retreat, we can maybe talk about our overall communication engagement strategy so that we better understand in addition to some of the other items that my peers have brought up. I think this is the time that we can have discussion though. Yes, Anna.
Curious if some of the communication needs or gaps would be better understood after we have an opportunity to listen, like the listening sessions too, of like, once we actually get to sit down with our constituents and do the town hall or the listening sessions, and we can hear from them, like where do they feel like, because I think we have a unique, and you brought up some good points, a unique perspective of knowing like, because we're sitting in these meetings and we're hearing the people that have come and spoken to us, and we have an understanding of what sanctuary city means, and we know when we passed a resolution, and we have that. But if we might not always understand exactly what where the communication gap is happening, because we're seeing information, we're understanding information, but I think we need to hear it from our constituents and our citizens of why they feel like they're not getting this information. Because I went and looked at our city website today, and we do have links to a lot of stuff. There's a lot of good explanations there, that if that's not a resource that people are using. And then I also appreciate what you said, Councilman Stepina, about like the social media is what a lot of people use in our community, but there's a lot of us, I just flat out refuse. I don't, I will not use social media. But yeah, and I think some other people are, the same, they feel the same way too. So, we need to kind of find out what is the best way to do these communications, and do we really have the gaps that, that you're mentioning? And I believe that we do, but I think maybe we can make better decisions once we've had a chance.
Yeah, I agree that not all of us have heard the same thing as we hear this feedback in isolation individually, as Councilor Stepina mentioned. So it's difficult for us necessarily to all come to this table when we've had these individual conversations and provide clear, concise direction for staff to go out and execute on something, when I don't think we have provided as clear direction with clear executables to staff as we would need to provide for them to deliver on. If we as a council, I think, would need to do a better job of doing that in order for them to actually do the things that you're mentioning to deliver.
That's the point.
Yeah. So if, and I agree with Councilor Cavallari that in order to do that, all of us, that was the point of the listening sessions, I believe, was so all of us can have a more complete understanding of all of those things, all of those expectations from the entire community, everybody in the community, so we can make a more informed decision. We haven't had those yet. I would like to have those as soon as we can. Hopefully we in the next door can get that on the books as soon as possible.
I agree that, yes, there's stuff to be learned from listening sessions, but I also can see that we are not, like, even if you just look at social media by itself, we are not doing enough there. Like, I think maybe Abigail said we put something once every week or 2 weeks. Like, there should be 3 posts a week, I feel like, and we haven't done any videos like these that we've talked about that before. So I'd like really prioritizing that and getting stuff out there multiple times a week, I think, is reasonable. And yeah, I don't know about the outsourcing. Like, I understand that's like putting stuff on staff's plate, and that's just another thing that they have to do, but it's also really important, right? So I don't know.
It does sound a little bit to me that we might be talking about 2 kind of different things here. One, we're talking about, for people who don't know, I do work in social media for a large organization. We're talking about a couple different elements here. We're talking about crisis communication about a really specific entity here, but then it also sounds like we're talking about a broader, just how the city utilizes social media. And I think that's a pretty far-ranging conversation that, I don't know, I have a little bit of trepidation about, in terms of, I think that, I don't know that that is, how much of that is council's responsibility, because it does seem like very much a city manager and staff related discussion regarding staff, and council can have input on that. I do definitely think that the more time sensitive and urgent thing is about this critical situation that we're dealing with now and will be continuing to deal with. And I would kind of like to, even though they're linked, I think it's maybe better now to like really talk about that, get that dialed in, because that is like that is crisis communication that we're talking about. And then if we want to, I don't know, talk about broader, just general communication about city things and social media, that be maybe a separate conversation, because that's kind of broader and that can involve a lot of different facets. So
Yeah, just, a couple things. Totally agree. Like Tamira said earlier, is this an emergency? Like, we should be treating it like an emergency. These aren't like, I'm not forming my basis of like, we need to get this communication plan prioritized, because I've heard from like a few people here and there. I've been extremely engaged, going to protests, going to community meetings. I've heard tons of testimony from people. Like, you know, if we're going to do this a traditional way, yeah, we're going to have listening sessions in March, town hall in April. It's not quick enough. Like, can things be refined from there? Absolutely. But this is a crisis, right? And it's to me, like, we can't wait. We can't, you know, I use the phrase Abigail pointed out, boil the ocean on this. To me, it's just, we've been doing all this work. There's been a ton of work done within the city. We need to push that information out to people in a way that they can consume it. And it's 2026 and people use social media. It's like, we don't need to debate this for like 3 days, right? It's just, you know, some people are gonna, we have newsletters. Some people are gonna use newsletters. Some people are gonna go to the city website. Some people are gonna use social media. I want to encourage people to keep coming here and telling us and giving us feedback and writing us and giving us feedback and testimony. I want, Abigail's been engaged with different cities. Gladys has been engaged with community organizations. We're getting feedback, right? And most of what that points to at this point is like, oh, you should start working on this. There's a lot of work happening that people don't understand because we're not communicating about it.
Yeah, I think what I'm proposing is that we are in an emergency declaration in a crisis situation, and that we be really clear and have messaging immediately go out around the clarity around the roles and the authority, and what is the difference between city police and even public works, and how we do not ask anyone for any sort of immigration status for city services. It's important that we have a know your rights information so that folks understand, should they be in the situation, here is their rights that the Constitution grants them. And that information needs to be consistent across all those channels. Like I mentioned, the website, that way whomever wants to go to the website, they're finding out similar information through the website, through the police department, bilingual press releases, whatever it may be, and that it's trauma informed. So I think that's the first and foremost that I've brought up in the last couple of meetings that majority of you have, all of you have supported, and that it hasn't happened. So I think that's the first issue, is we have asked for messaging to go out and it has not happened. That's the first piece. In addition to that, do we need to give better direction? Do we need to better understand, okay, we don't have high utilization of our newsletters, for example, right? So then do we then move those dollars to then solely focus on social media? Do we have staff capacity to do social media, right? If we don't, how are we outsourcing, for example? So yes, two different topics. One is, we are in a crisis. We need to ensure that there is clarity to our constituents and that this information comes from their local governments around the roles and the authority that we hold, the know your rights information that's consistent across all channels. The latter part of a community engagement framework, that could be at a retreat, for example. We're in the conversations about planning what that looks like. What should be, what sort of policy do we need to create around, and I'm just making this up, whenever we have a resolution, there is going to be messaging that goes out in social media with a week turnaround, for example. Like, we can set that level of clarity so then staff understands, like, here's the processes and they own that, right? We own the policy pieces. So I think I'm saying, I haven't seen social media updates. I'm trying to understand why. How are we more explicit in a longer retreat work session where we can talk about that so that we can be successful? Because when we don't, we have comment like we had today. You're not doing your job, when we've had that discussion. Like, yes, we want to ensure that folks understand the roles. That is our job, and our constituents are not feeling like we are treating it as such. And so then that creates distrust with us as a council. And that is what is essential that we sustain, because we know we are doing our best, right? We are responding to our constituents' needs and wants as they arise. And we will continue to learn more through these listening sessions, but they're asking us to act now, and we haven't delivered. So I think this needs to go out sooner rather than later, and I'm trying to understand, when can we expect to see this? Because it's really important that folks are hearing it directly from their city government, and that it's not that it's factual information as opposed to hearsay that, you know, anyone can now have a social media account and create false narratives or misstatements.
Thank you all for these comments. I think I want to summarize what I think I'm hearing, because I think there's a lot of different threads here and I'm definitely missing pieces, but I think I'm hearing when you said you want to hear like what's happening. I mean, we can put out a video this week. I think Jackie and I have talked specifically about something that shows this is what our police look like, this is what our cars look like, this is what our public works staff look like, this is what their cars look like. That feels like a very straightforward, concrete piece. And we can continue to work on this. We have been posting. I mean, like I said, we've been posting every other week. I'm hearing that's not enough. 3 times a week is probably not able for us at our current staffing level to do. I can look into what it could look like to outsource if that's the piece. I also want to be careful about balancing the amount of messaging on one topic versus all the other crisis. We also have other topics we need to cover. In fact, the last development code piece question went out, so that will be going out in email as well. And we want to bring that back to you because I know that's a critical piece for this, you know, your #1 work plan. So I already had scheduled our community engagement manager or specialist to join me for my one-on-ones at the end of February. I can see if we can move that up. I'm not sure if that works from a scheduling point of view. If some of you are willing to reschedule with me on a different day when the 3 of us could meet, you and Jackie and myself, to work on community engagement pieces. I'm not sure, do you want to see a plan or something next time, or just, you know, I guess between now and the next meeting, it certainly send you out a like, here's what we've got planned for feedback. You just want to comment with me or send me good examples from other cities. I had not planned on putting together a formal plan on all of our social media engagement for the next several months, but can certainly do that if that's something you want to see. Let me know what deliverable you want from this conversation.
Yeah, and I think that's the difficult of this, you know, the difficulty of this context, right? Is, you know, we have to be cart before the horse, right? Is kind of like what is the way that I feel. We can't like develop a social media strategy or something like that we don't have yet to be able to inform, right? Like I said, I'm going off of, you know, I don't know how many hours I've spent on this particular topic, but it's a lot, right? And, you know, I think it serves the city, it serves the police department, it serves the council for us to do this, because calling back to what Gladys said about her growing up here and just like there wasn't a lot of information when there were, you know, these types of moments. And I think what people are seeing, you know, out there is, you know, a lot of cities that have a lot, you know, large cities that have a lot of money and lots of police force and all this kind of stuff responding. And I know we can't hold ourselves to that same type of standard, but that does not mean that we can't, you know, act like this is an emergency and just put out some information, right? Like the harder thing is the work, is getting people trained, is understanding what our roles are versus, you know, the chief putting out a statement or Abigail putting out a statement or working with us to put out statements when there is an event or when there's, you know, something that's significant in the community, right? So to me, like, you know, you tell us the best way to communicate that and we will do that if it requires an agenda item. If tonight it's, you know, like specific actions, but I think, you know, I just would hate for the work that's getting done and also the work thinking about this issue to just be lost in like council comments. And I think that's partly our fault for not saying, let's make this an agenda item before, because we want to make sure that you have actionable items. And, you know, like I said, I think Gladys did a good job sort of laying out that framework and bullet pointing and everything, but we really need to hear from you. Like what's the, I've heard all of your feedback, all this kind of stuff. Now, based on that, like, you know, this is what I think these action items should be. Do you agree? That sort of stuff, right? Like what's the best way to communicate to you in a crisis like situation like this to be able to get some actions sooner than later, but then again, build upon it. And then if we, you know, we talk about something that's more of a more holistic strategy, or even this part of this strategy, that like an event or within a town hall or something like that. That's what I'm trying to understand. I mean, you're nodding, like, does that make sense to you? Like, do we need to give you some, Abigail, go do this and vote on it tonight? Like, that's the kind of stuff that I'm.
Yeah, I sorry, select process, so just thinking like perhaps we have a department head meeting tomorrow, we can, I shared the email and those points, and so we can talk about like what do we think we can accomplish with the resources we have, or then come back and ask you what resources we need, and then I can just loop back with all of you by the end of this week with some things. But I think that we already are on track. I mean, we have done 3 videos already. Perhaps they were not the videos you were looking for, but how you can participate from court, from remotely. Councilor President Rivera did one after we did the emergency declaration. The mayor did one early on. And then we've been regularly posting announcements. So I'm hearing, I don't know if it's different than that or more of that, but we can talk about that tomorrow and review all of the things that we've heard. And then come to you if we need additional resources to do that. The other thing I did not mention earlier is I heard from you in council comments a couple meetings ago, maybe it was last meeting, a request or a desire for social media accounts that you could have as elected officials. City attorney has given me a first draft of a policy that I will review, and I will bring that to you for conversation at the next meeting, because that might also help if you are able to use an official channel to communicate with people directly to supplement what the city is doing besides, because at this point, I clearly hear a strong desire to communicate with the public, but you're having to wait for staff to do it when not directly yourself.
And I just want to respond just directly to what you said about, like the videos that have been produced. I think what I've been hearing people ask for more is, the sort of like, what can the police do? What can't they do? When there are events, we speak directly to that particular event. I think it's difficult for those to understand that, it's not like the police know when the police aren't told when ICE is showing up. And the police aren't in such numbers that they're going to be able to see every event that happen quickly and all that sort of stuff, right? But people don't understand that, right? So part of it is to me responding to specific events when they happen in a timely manner, to weigh in. If there was a police presence, what did the police observe? Or like not to the detail level of like an investigation or anything like that, but people are asking us what they're seeing in other cities where, if the police do respond, that they've taken down a statement or something like that, providing it to the district attorney, or just saying like, hey, we realized there was an ICE event today. The Hood River Police were not on site, did not respond. Like quick statements like that to be able to build trust. That's not just like, well, here's our policy every time something happens. Like speak to the event, which I realize takes a little bit more time, but it also doesn't need to be like fully produced content. It's just, like the day after the Dowells did their, it wasn't a resolution. What's the best way to say it?
I think they had a resolution that they called a statement of concern.
Statement of concern, like, the statement of concern, like the next day, like, their police chief had like a cell phone video, you know what I mean? It wasn't like some huge thing, right? And that's not what I'm expecting people to do on city staff, is like spend all sorts of time like refining messages. It's just like speak to singular events, but also, continue to inform about what the city's role is, what the city's role is not, what police are able to do, what police are not able to do, that sort of thing, right? Because I think a lot of confusion and a lot of perceptions are out there. People read about other cities in Oregon where there's, allegations of collusion with local law enforcement and local city officials to aid ICE, and people are concerned about that. So like when they don't see anything from us, they're like, what are they doing, right? It's just that sort of thing versus tons of, produced content that has to be labored over. It's just speaking to things to let them know that, we are aware of events when they happen, or if we're not aware when things happen, we didn't have a presence. That's the kind of stuff that I think that I see other cities doing.
Is this where we would usually just say, let's have a thumbs up? Like, do we have 4 thumbs up to like have something on the agenda for our next meeting? Or like, I mean, what is this? I guess I'm looking for also like, I'm looking at you guys because you're kind of leading the conversation and giving some direction to Abigail, but I'm also, what are you asking from us? And is it something that we should have on the agenda so that the public has an opportunity to weigh in, or how, like, I think that, I mean, which we've heard them weigh in too, but yeah, I just, what are you asking from
I'd like an agenda item next
up.
next time.
Great.
So, yeah. Who will support that?
I was just saying, it feels like almost like a work session. Like,
It does, and that's just this is where
Yeah.
I'm really it shouldn't have to be this difficult. Like we've asked for this several meetings ago, and it hasn't happened until, you know, the Hood River News the next day that we declared, or sorry, Columbia Gorge, apologies. They had a press release the day after, and it was just a visual, you know, sanctuary city. Like that was fast. How do we do that? Do we need to be that explicit? I don't think so, right? I think it's very clear that, okay, moving forward, whenever something happens, we are getting information out in a timely manner, and that it comes from us, though, from their city government. Do I appreciate a thumbs up? Can we continue having discussion around communications? Yes, absolutely. Me? Oh, sorry. Oh, okay. I lost my train of thought. Yes.
Well,
yes.
yeah, what I think you're getting at here is like, you know, we've been doing all this kind of stuff piecemeal, right? Like if we have an action item, and that what I would propose is like kind of what Abigail's just like, oh, I'm just piecing together this information right now. I need to meet with the department heads, kind of doing a readout from there, and having us discuss it versus just like more brainstorming sessions, you know, so to speak. That's what that to clarify what an action item would be. It'd be that. Because we've given a lot of information already. It just needs to be put into a succinct thing that we can, you know, vote on or whatever it needs to be.
I think.
May I chime in? Since I do the social media and press releases and website updates, I think I have a clear understanding. I think this has been a discussion point for several meetings now, and I think there were maybe some misunderstandings of like what is crisis communication, what you mean by a crisis situation, as well as like the timeliness of things and what the expectations are. Like I tend to be like, okay, I want to make sure the website's updated. I want to make sure all of our things are there, and then I can link everyone to our sources. What I'm hearing is that you want something out quickly. We can worry about getting that all the like exact, like here's the actual resolution language. We can let people know when that's available too, but you just want people to know right away when the decision has been made and when something has been discussed. And I think that that's absolutely something that we can do. And so, I mean, it's up to you guys if you guys want to have this be another agenda item, but I think I have several bullet points of ways to improve the communication in the way that you're asking for without it having to be. I think Abigail and I can come up with a plan and perhaps present that to is one of the next council meetings or something like that, or in one-on-one discussions. It's up to you guys how you guys want to see that. But I definitely think there's a few bullets here that are very accomplishable. Yes, there has been robust discussion. I think we thought we were maybe meeting some of those, but we're hearing that we're not. So, yes.
And the other thing that we want to understand is like, you're asking us to do too much if we are, like, you know, if, and, you know, to the point that I made earlier, like, if you need help, because, like, I know Abigail spent tons of extra hours on this kind of stuff, right? And like I said, the way I phrased it earlier is like, you know, she has a city to run, right? So like, please tell us if it's unreasonable, and we can discuss if we can use things like out of the emergency fund for now, before we have some sort of developed social media strategy down the road, or communication strategy. And social media is just a component of it. Like, let us know, right? Like, and we can discuss that on council as well. Let us know how council can help, right? Like, you know, what can we do, you know, since we're in a crisis right now, what can we all do to sort of band together and ensure that it's not just falling on Abigail and Jackie?
I kind of building on what Councilor Espino was saying a little bit earlier. I feel like in general, we just need to be like a little bit more real and not as like theoretical or something. Like, I feel like so far our posts have just been very general and broad, but it's like, let's be real with people. We know this happened today, like, and not just be like, oh, well, if something happens, or, you know. So that's one thing that I wanted to say. The other was, would it make sense or would it be helpful if, like, you know, if we know that something happened, could we check in with you guys and be like, you know, we heard this happen. Do you know that it happened? Can we get, you know, like, so that there's more people that have ears and eyes on the ground that we can know more what to report on, instead of like, well, maybe you didn't even hear that that thing happened, so you don't know to report or put a post out or something. I don't know if that would be helpful or just annoying. And let's see, what was the last thing? I guess those are my two main things, but yeah, just, and not having it to have, again, like Doug was saying, like, it doesn't have to be this grand production. It just needs to be simple and real. And I think that's the important part. And it can be made quickly, like, yeah.
I just like to know what the balance is, because again, not being a social media person, but like, what is the balance for a realistic time frame? And I want to thank you for making those comments, because you made me think about this. But what is the realistic time frame for being immediate, but also verifying truth? Because one of the things we don't want to encourage city to do is be reactive and, you know, propagate misinformation. So what is that balance, and what are you guys seeing and seeking as far as direction for being proactive in our communications, but also being accurate? Because I think that is hugely important.
You know, I'm a part of the Rapid Response Network. And so, I mean, the second something happens, I've had many conversations with the folks on there that before any sort of public statement goes out on anybody's social media platforms, we need to validate and verify that this is truly happened. And that does. And they've done a great job since. I will say that early on, there were some times where they'd put something out and wouldn't do that. And so as we think about timeline, do we need to be really explicit with staff of, we expect a turnaround to be X amount of time to give us time to validate and verify? You know, I don't know. I think that just these points that I brought up, we've discussed it, we've agreed on it, and that it hasn't happened. And so as I think about that, you know, as Doug mentioned, are there additional resources that are needed? Do we need to give additional direction around timeliness, right? And all of those pieces, like, how do we help? How do we help give clarity moving forward so that we have constituents that feel well informed by their local government and that feel that we are truly acting upon this emergency situation? Right now it's immigration. You know, 2 weeks from now, it could be another flood, for example, and that we still need to have the same level of emergent communication that goes out. I think you had something to say.
Oh, I'm just struggling a little bit about like, what is the best way to do this? Because right now, one of the things I'm thinking about, this is kind of an awkward situation where we have 7 people here essentially telling one person how to do their job. You know what I mean? Well,
I just call that Monday.
yeah, I mean, I would say that's more Abigail's job, in this situation, but
We direct policy, right? Then Abigail helps us understand process. We haven't had an update, which leads me, do we need to have a better conversation or a more clear conversation around policy to understand the process?
yeah, I'm just saying that we're talking about some like really specific things here about like basically collectively here trying to, it feels like we're trying to come up with like a social media plan and strategy. We're getting to really finite details. And that's the thing that I'm having a little bit of trouble. And I'm strictly talking about like, what is the best way to do this, or like the efficiency, making sure we're getting the outcomes that we want. That's all that I'm saying. I wasn't terribly prepared for this whole discussion to happen at this level. I do think it's worth having. I just want to make sure we're doing it in a way that is like works best. I do think that maybe what's helpful is that like you have I'd say like 3 or 4 things on there that are like crisis level that need to be addressed immediately in terms of, you know, a post about know your rights, you know, a post about what you can do if ICE comes to your door, like stuff like that. That like we're prioritizing these 4 you know, things that need to be out sooner rather than later. And then I don't know if it's like an agenda item on the next meeting or, you know, like a work session about this or what. I'm just struggling a little bit with like how this is going in terms of like making sure we're organized about this and make sure that the staff has clear direction about like what are the policies for the different kinds of communications, because again, we're not talking about, this is not all the same communication that we're talking about, and this is a pretty sizable conversation, I think, as somebody who works in this arena, so that's what I'm saying.
Can I bring you, you know, immediate, here's what we're doing around immigration enforcement messaging by the end of this week? And we will get something out this week in video format. And then the bigger conversation around communications and pieces, you know, we can put an agenda item on and can work to refine that. And then, as I said, Jackie was planning to join me at the end of February for bigger community engagement framework, and so maybe we can continue that conversation. So if we can have an immediate thing by this week, and then a medium term, which is in 2 weeks in your next meeting, and then a longer term end of February and into March. Sure, yeah, please amend that.
I think that's amazing. So yes, please.
Yes, and
as it pertains to rapid response, like, and I want everybody to understand this too. How does rapid response community organizations communicate to the city when there's events that are happening? People need to understand, I mean, they're almost out there 24 hours a day, right, Gladys? Like it's that they're tracking vehicles, they're ensuring that those vehicles are if they don't have license plates or whatever, is this a known vehicle? They work with the PIRC. There's people that are out there that are doing this all the time. And it makes me think to like when Tamir was earlier, like, don't make me do this all by myself. So what I'm telling you all is the reality that like what's happening out there is rapid responses, like communicating through like Tamira's travel service on Facebook. Like that's how stuff's getting out right now. And to further clarify her statement, she's like, help me, right? Like you're the city. I'm just somebody out here that's like volunteering, right? Like it's, yeah.
Thank you for that. And I think we did have one post where someone had seen a police vehicle shortly after verified ICE activity, and we did put out something saying we were not involved. And but I don't have a good sense of how rapid response is verifying their information, because of course we are not privy to this information. So what I would appreciate if you know people who are, and I know it's very much volunteer organization, but if I could talk to someone who is in charge and they are willing to share their information of how their information is verified and what their processes are, then perhaps we could create a relationship where we feel good about rumor control. And I mean, because the very last thing I want the city to be responsible for is creating a culture of fear or sharing false information. So, but I really appreciate that. It would be a great opportunity to talk to someone who is, you know, leading this effort and can talk to me and to the police chief about the practices and policies that they're following, not about specific events necessarily, although happy to hear about it. But, you know, what does what kind of information can a government agency receive that can be verifiable and can be safely shared with our public?
Yeah, I'm happy to help coordinate there. What I can talk about the process is that license plates are being vetted, and and I've done this myself, you have the ability to see whether that's like a private owner or whether that is some sort of government agency. And that is what has been utilized in the last couple encounters, where initially sometime last year, they didn't go through that process to validate and verify. So yes, happy to connect you so that you're hearing directly from those that are a part of that. There are several individuals that do this on a 24-hour basis.
And can I verify, again, just follow up with that, because what you just said made me think of a question of, I think city social media can be helpful in the there was an ICE, action in our city, our police were not involved, or our police were on the scene, or whatever it could, they were not involved in the enforcement, but maybe helped with traffic control afterwards, whatever. I am not sure what you just said, if you're a little bit hoping that we would also say a vehicle that we think might be ICE is cited in the city. Okay.
No, I
perfect.
think that we've talked about this as a council, where when an incident does happen, that we be really clear to folks, because it happened last June where our local police department was present, and that created misconceptions, and that we are debunking those misconceptions. Like, our police
Got it.
is there for traffic control, whatever,
Oh,
right?
was
To
it? Mhm.
record, to make sure that our district attorney, should something illegal happen there's a report. They're there to
Great.
essentially protect you.
Yeah, but we think there's a vehicle in town that was.
No.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
No fear-based.
And I think that, like, if rapid response is like, hey, we have a very, like, we think we have a verifiable claim that ICE is in the community, I want the police to know that,
Oh,
right?
mhm.
Because we see what's happening when these events happen,
Yeah.
right? People are getting more charged up. There's gonna be more interactions. Their tactics are, they're not trained, and they're inciting violence. And I want the police to know that they're there just for that. Just like, well, we better keep an eye on this
Sure.
in case there's an event.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think the perception again out there is like, oh, the police know everything that happens in the city. That's not true, right? Like, it's not. Like, they're doing their job.
Right.
Right? So, and they don't get informed when anybody comes here. So it's more about like, well, we think we have a verified claim, and something you could give to the police department or whoever is helping coordinate, our response to that sort of thing. It's information that people think we have that we don't.
Great. I look forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Also, I know we're saying like, our police, almost like the perspective from the city social media accounts. I don't know who runs the Hood River City Police Facebook account, if it's multiple people. But I would also maybe like to see the city's police account also put out some of this information that is particularly, I don't know, I'll call it law enforcement adjacent, especially because, putting on my social media hat, city's Facebook page has 4,000 followers. The police page has 12,000. Neil's pumping his fist. 12,000 followers. So that's a lot. That's a lot of eyeballs out there. So if that's something that can happen, I think that would be another good way to get the message out to more people.
Sounds like a clear goal to grow our communication efforts. All right, we are going to go into executive session. The city council will now meet in executive session pursuant to Oregon Revised Statute 192.6601 to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to carry on labor negotiations, and Oregon Revised Statute 192.6601H to consult with counsel concerning the legal rights and duties of a public body with regard to current litigation or litigation likely to be filed. Representatives of the news media and designated staff are allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are asked to leave the room, and we will end public broadcast. No decision may be made nor final action taken in executive session. The executive session is anticipated to last 20 minutes. At the end of the executive session, the city council will be adjourned and no action will be taken. We will now discontinue the live feed and recording.